Rain tapped against the glass skylight of the Musée d'Orage like hesitant fingers, each drop distorting the dim glow of the overhead enchantments. Harry stood before the ornate Venetian mirror at the center of the east wing, its gilded frame blackened at the edges, as though licked by invisible flame. The surface didn't reflect the room. Instead, it showed a hallway of stone and silver torches, too symmetrical, too still, like a memory pretending to breathe. He stepped closer, breath fogging the cold air, and raised his wand. Homenum revelio, nothing, no heartbeat, no warmth, no presence. Yet the mirror pulsed, faint and slow, like a buried clock ticking through stone. Behind him, the creak of the gallery door cut through the silence. He didn't turn. He knew the scent before she spoke, jasmine and salt, like a shore kissed by storm. "This is not natural magic, Harry Potter," Fleur Delacour said, her voice low, measured. "It tastes of something, older, hungrier." He turned. She stood in the doorway, her silver hair half-bound, a ministry satchel slung over one shoulder. Her robes were practical, charcoal gray with silver-threaded clasps, but they could not dull the quiet radiance of her Veela blood. Even now, in the dim light, her eyes held a shimmer, pale blue, almost silver, and they were fixed on the mirror with a kind of wary recognition. "You can taste it?" Harry asked. She stepped forward, gloves in hand, and didn't answer right away. Instead, she lifted one hand, not touching the glass, but hovering just above it. A faint tremor ran through her fingers. "It sings," she whispered. A hum beneath the silence, like a voice calling through water, and it pulls. "Not at my body, at my blood." Harry frowned. "Pulls how?" "Like memory," she said, and for the first time, her voice wavered. "Like something lost is on the other side, asking to be found." He studied her. Fleur had always been poised, cool, even in battle. But now, her breath came shallow, and the air around her seemed to prickle, as if her Veela instincts were rising unbidden, bristling at an unseen threat. "This mirror was reported 3 days ago," he said, shifting tone. "Curator said it started showing a different gallery, same layout, but the paintings were reversed. Then, 2 nights ago, a night guard vanished. Last sighting, walking toward this mirror. Didn't come back." Fleur's gaze didn't leave the glass. "And you think he's still in there?" "I think something took him, or he stepped through. The ministry's been keeping it quiet, but this isn't isolated. There are reports. Amsterdam, Prague, even Hogsmeade, a dozen mirrors acting the same way. All antique, all with silver backing, old enchantments layered like scar tissue." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a slender brass rod, etched with Ouroboros runes. The Silver Commission studied these in Marseille last year. Called them mirror wells, doorways that open when 2 worlds breathe too close. Dangerous, unstable. 2 worlds? Harry said. She nodded. There are places, thin places, where reality frays. Mirrors, being reflective by nature, can become anchors, especially when enchanted by hands that don't understand what they awaken. She tapped the rod against the mirror's frame. A chime rang out too deep for its size, and the glass rippled, like water struck by a stone. And then, for a heartbeat, the reflection changed. Not the stone hallway anymore. A garden. White lilies. A woman in a pale blue dress, long hair turned away, reaching for something just beyond sight. Harry inhaled sharply. Fleur recoiled. "No, that's impossible." "Who is that?" Harry asked, but he already knew. "That's Gabrielle," Fleur whispered. "But she's not. She wouldn't be there, not like that, not in a place like this." The image flickered, gone. The stone hallway returned. Fleur's hand trembled. "Something is using these mirrors not just to cross, but to call, to show us what we've lost, or what we could have had." Harry stared at the glass. His own ghosts felt closer now. A boy who never grew up, a mother's eyes, green and wide, a godfather falling through a veil. "If it shows us what we want," he said slowly, "how do we know what's real on the other side?" Fleur turned to him, her voice barely above a breath. "We don't, but someone does, and they're walking through every mirror in Europe, stealing more than objects, stealing pieces of us." The air in the abandoned shop on Diagon Alley's forgotten side street tasted stale, thick with dust and the faint metallic tang of unraveling enchantments. Moonlight bled through the cracked window, glinting off the shattered surface of a standing mirror framed in tarnished silver serpents. Harry stepped carefully over broken glass, wand raised, its tip casting a narrow beam of light that danced uneasily across the floor. The silence was wrong, too heavy, too complete. No scuttle of rats, no whisper of wind, just the slow, rhythmic pulse of magic that wasn't supposed to be there. He reached the mirror. The reflection wasn't his. Instead, a narrow hallway stretched behind the glass, candlelit, lined with portraits, whose eyes moved independently, watching him. A door at the far end stood slightly ajar, spilling warm light onto polished stone. Harry leaned closer. The air shimmered. Then a shadow passed through that distant doorway. Quick, hooded, deliberate. "Wait," he called, reaching forward. The figure turned. Not toward him, toward the mirror. And for a single heartbeat, Harry saw the glint of something silver around the thief's neck, something that pulsed like a second heartbeat. Then the reflection warped. The glass didn't break, it folded, like water given form. The thief stepped forward, not into the shop, but out of the mirror. 1 foot on the stone floor beyond, the other, still in this world. Harry lunged, too late. The thief stepped fully through and vanished. The mirror snapped back into stillness, showing only the deemed shop, Harry's wide-eyed reflection, and the jagged crack, splitting the glass down the middle. Fleur appeared in the doorway, her breath coming quick, her pale hair catching the moonlight like strands of moonlit silk. She didn't speak at first, her eyes, pale blue, sharp, with something deeper than sight, fixed on the mirror. She inhaled deeply, her Veela senses flaring to life. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with an invisible current. "It's gone cold," she murmured. "But not gone." Harry turned. They walked through it, just stepped out, like it was a door. Fleur stepped forward, careful not to touch the glass. She raised a hand, palm outward. A faint silver light curled from her fingertips, threading through the air like smoke. "Not a door," she corrected. "A wound. The mirror. It's been cut open, not broken, unzipped." Her voice dropped. "This is old magic, Harry. Older than Hogwarts. Older than the Ministry." He frowned. "What kind of magic?" "Mirror-walking," she said the word, like a whisper from a tomb. "It was banned by the International Confederation nearly 5 centuries ago. Too dangerous. The mirrors were gateways between worlds, between times. But they bled. Reality. Thinned where they were used. People stepped through and never came back, or came back wrong." She turned to him, her expression tight. "And whoever did this," she gestured to the cracked frame, "used a Veela charm to stabilize the breach. I can still taste it, like frost on fire." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room. A Veela helped them. "No," Fleur said sharply. "The charm is corrupted, twisted. It's not pure, like someone tried to mimic our magic without understanding it. But they knew enough to fool the wards." She closed her eyes, inhaling again. "They've done this before. The trail. It's layered, like echoes stacked on top of each other." He looked at the mirror again. "Can you follow it?" She hesitated. "Yes, but not without risk. The longer the breach stays open, the more the worlds press against each other. One wrong step, and we might not return as ourselves." Her eyes met his. "You felt it, didn't you, when you looked in?" "The pull?" He nodded. "Like something was calling." Fleur's voice softened. "Then you understand. This isn't just theft. This is hunger. And whatever's on the other side, it's learning how to reach us." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, opalescent shard, a piece of mirror, glowing faintly. "I've been tracking these breaches across Europe, Paris, Prague, a village in the Carpathians. Each one left a scar, and each scar leads to this." Harry stared at the shard. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "We go through," he said. Fleur didn't argue. She only nodded, her jaw set. "But not here. This mirror is dying. We need one that's still breathing." She turned toward the door. "There's another, in Hogsmeade, and I think it's waiting for us." The glass didn't shatter. It breathed. One moment, Harry stood before an ornate, gilded mirror in an abandoned Parisian antiques shop. its surface clouded with dust and age. The next, the reflection rippled like water, struck by a stone, and the air turned thick with the scent of ozone and something older, like rain on forgotten stone. Fleur stepped forward first, her hand outstretched, fingers trembling slightly as they passed through the surface. There was no resistance, only a cool, tingling sensation, as if dipping her hand into a stream beneath moonlight. "Murd," she whispered, her breath catching. Harry followed, stepping through as one might step off a ledge. The world folded in on itself, colors inverted, sounds stretched and warped. Laughter from a cafe on Rue de Rivoli became a hollow echo, like voices trapped in a seashell. His stomach lurched, and for a heartbeat he felt weightless, stretched thin between realities. Then solid ground. They stood at the edge of a Seine that flowed backward. The water crept upstream in slow, silent defiance of nature, its surface black and glassy, reflecting a sky bruised violet and gold, though no sun was visible. Across the river, the Eiffel Tower stood, taller, thinner, its iron lattice overgrown with glowing silver vines that pulsed faintly, like veins. Paris was there, and not there. Familiar landmarks twisted into strange silhouettes. Notre Dame's spire spiraled into a helix. The Louvre's glass pyramid was inverted, a gaping maw descending into the earth. Fleur wrapped her arms around herself, her breathing shallow. "It feels wrong," she murmured. "Not just different. It feels like the world is holding its breath." Harry drew his wand, the motion automatic. "We're not supposed to be here." "No," she agreed, her voice tight. "The air, can you feel it? It pulls at me. Like my blood knows it shouldn't be here." Her eyes, usually a clear, icy blue, shimmered with a faint, unnatural light, silver threading through the irises. A Veela response. The space between worlds was unraveling something in her, something ancient. They moved cautiously along the quay. Cobblestones were replaced with smooth obsidian tiles that reflected not their faces but fragments. Harry saw himself in third year, wand raised against a Dementor. Fleur glimpsed a version of herself in a black wedding gown, standing alone beneath a dead oak. They both flinched. "Keep your eyes forward," Harry said, though his own gaze lingered on the image of Ginny, older, smiling at a child with messy black hair. His, but Ginny had never wanted children. Not with him, not after the war had hollowed them both out. Fleur touched his arm. "Harry," he turned. Across the street, a cafe sat crooked on its foundation, its sign reading Star, Honorar Berset, Star. A woman sat at a corner table, her face obscured by a wide hat. But the way she held her teacup, the delicate tilt of her wrist, Harry knew. "Tonks," he breathed. She looked up. It wasn't her. Not quite. Same wild pink hair, but streaked with gray. Same mischievous glint, dulled by sorrow. She stared at them, unblinking, then slowly raised a hand and tapped the air beside her. A mirror appeared from nothing, floating like a pane of ice. In it, their own reflections looked back, but distorted. Harry's scar was gone. Fleur's hair was dark, her skin marked with tribal runes. The woman smiled sadly and whispered something they couldn't hear. Then the mirror shattered, and she was gone. Fleur exhaled sharply. "She knew us, or knew who we could have been," Harry said, his throat tight. The wind picked up, carrying whispers in languages that slithered just beyond understanding. The sky darkened further. The silver vines on the Eiffel Tower began to writhe. "We can't stay," Fleur said. "Every second, I feel it pulling me apart. Like I'm being asked to choose, Veela or woman, lover or warrior. And I don't know which version of me belongs here." Harry looked at her. Not just the beauty, the grace, but the quiet sorrow beneath. The woman who'd lost so much, who'd buried her sister, survived war, loved fiercely, and been left behind. He reached for her hand. "Then we don't choose. Not here. We go back, after the thief, after the truth." She squeezed his fingers, her pulse fluttering like a caged bird. "And if the truth is that this world remembers what ours forgot?" He didn't answer. The mirror behind them flickered, beckoning. Returning wouldn't be as simple as stepping back. Nothing in this place was simple. But they stepped anyway. The air in the abandoned mirror shop of Prague tasted of dust and forgotten spells. Shattered glass littered the floor like frozen rain, each fragment reflecting not the ruined room, but distant skies, shadowed corridors or faces that flickered too quickly to recognize. Harry crouched beside a cracked full-length mirror, its frame tarnished silver etched with runes that pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. His breath fogged the surface, but the fog didn't linger. It sank into the glass, swallowed by the depths beyond. "This is where the trace ends," he murmured, fingertips brushing the cold surface. "He came through here." Fleur stood a few paces behind, her posture taut, every line of her body coiled with unease. The Veela in her recoiled from the mirror's presence, her silver-blue eyes narrowed, pupils dilated. "It is not just a doorway, Uri, it is a wound. Can you not feel it? The air? It pulls." He could. A low hum vibrated in his bones, a pressure behind his eyes that made focusing difficult. The reflections in the surrounding broken shards shifted erratically. Now a moonlit forest, now a stone tower, now a classroom he almost recognized. Then, from the largest mirror, a figure stepped out. Harry froze. It was Albus Dumbledore. Not the portrait version. Not a memory. A living man, tall, robed in deep violet, his silver beard and half-moon spectacles gleaming in the dim light. But his face was younger, sharper, untouched by the curse of the ring. He looked whole. "Harry," the man said, his voice warm, impossibly familiar. "You found me." Harry's breath caught. His wand trembled in his hand. "Professor, but you hide?" The man smiled softly. "In your world, yes, but not here. In this reflection, the ring was never worn. The curse never took hold." He took a step forward. "I've been watching you, you know. Through the glass. I knew you'd come." Fleur moved instantly, placing herself between Harry and the mirror. Her voice was low, urgent. "Non, do not listen. This is not him." But Harry's chest ached. This man had his eyes, his voice, the same gentle tilt of the head. "He sounds like him. He looks." "He's a reflection shaped by your grief," Fleur snapped, her Veela aura flaring faintly. "A shimmer in the air, like heat above stone. This world twists truth. It shows you what you long to see. That is not Dumbledore. It is a mimic, a lure." The man in the mirror sighed. "Fleur Delacour, still so guarded, but you of all people should understand longing. What would you give to see your sister again, as she was before the fire?" Fleur flinched as if struck. Harry turned to her. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched. "He's lying," she whispered. "It knows nothing." But the man in the mirror continued, his gaze returning to Harry. "I can help you stop the thief, Harry. I know where he's going next. But you must come through. Together, we can mend what's broken." Harry's fingers tightened on his wand. Memories surged. Dumbledore's wisdom, his guidance, the weight of his absence. What if this was real? What if there was a way to speak to him again? Fleur grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Look at the glass, Harry. Really look." He did. The mirror's surface rippled like water disturbed, and beneath Dumbledore's face, for just an instant, Harry saw something else. A shifting hollow thing, featureless and dark, wearing the image like a mask. His stomach dropped. The man smiled. "You're hesitating. That's good. Doubt is the first step toward truth." "No," Fleur said, her voice like ice. "It is the last step toward ruin." She raised her wand, not at the figure, but at the mirror itself. Protego reflecta, a wave of silvery light burst from her wand, striking the glass. The mirror screamed, a high, glassy shriek, and shattered inward, collapsing into itself like a dying star. The figure dissolved into smoke, its final whisper brushing Harry's ears. "You'll see me again." Silence fell. Harry stood trembling, his breath ragged. The shop was still, the other shards now dark, inert. Fleur lowered her wand, her shoulders sagging slightly. "They learn from you," she said quietly. "The longer you stay, the more they know, the more they use." He looked at her, guilt and shame burning in his chest. I know," she said, softer now. "That is how it begins, with a whisper, a face, a hope." She met his gaze. "Do not trust anything here, Harry, not even the ghosts you wish were real." The air in the abandoned chateau tasted of dust and old magic, thick with the silence that follows long abandonment. Harry's boots crunched over shattered glass as he moved deeper into the ruined hall, wand raised, its tip casting a narrow beam of light across peeling tapestries and fallen beams. Fleur walked ahead of him, barefoot despite the cold, her silver hair catching the dim glow like mist over moonlight. She didn't need light, not for this. Her breath came slow and shallow, her hands slightly outstretched as if tracing invisible threads in the air. A faint shimmer clung to her skin, Veela magic, restless and humming just beneath the surface. "It's here," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "It's breathing." Harry frowned. "Breathing." She didn't answer, her head tilted, eyes fluttering shut. A shiver ran through her, and her fingers curled inward, as if recoiling from heat. "There's pain in the air, not physical, older. Like a memory that won't die." Harry stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Can you tell where it's coming from?" She exhaled sharply. "Everywhere, but strongest, there." She pointed toward a collapsed archway, choked with ivy and splintered stone. Behind the wall, he approached the ruin, tapping his wand against the ancient bricks. "Solid stone, no hidden doors, no detection spells I can see." Fleur's eye snapped open, blue now, but storm-bright pupils dilated. "You won't see it, not with spells. It's not hidden by enchantment. It's hidden by wrongness. The wall is not where it should be." She stepped forward, gliding over debris, as if weightless. With one hand she brushed the moss-covered stones. A ripple passed through the air, like heat above desert sand. The wall seemed to star-breathe. Star, a subtle undulation, a momentary thinning. Harry stepped back, wand raised. "That's not possible." "It is," she said, voice tight. "The mirror magic is thin here, torn. This wall, it's not real, not fully. It's a scar." She pressed her palm flat against the stone. A soft, mournful chime echoed through the hall, though no visible mirror stood near. The air thickened. Harry's scar prickled, not with pain, but with something stranger, recognition. A whisper of déjà vu, as though he'd stood in this place before, in another life. Fleur gasped. "What is it?" he asked. Her hand trembled against the wall. "I see voices, not words, emotions. A woman crying, a child laughing. They're trapped between, not dead, not alive, just waiting." Harry swallowed. "Like echoes. Like prisoners," she corrected, voice raw. "The mirror didn't just open a door. It star-ripped star one, and things got caught in the tear." She turned to him, eyes luminous. "There's a chamber behind this wall, a place where the mirrors were made, or broken. I can feel it calling." "Why you?" Harry asked quietly. "Why can only you sense this?" She looked away, her voice softer now. "Veela are tied to reflection. We see ourselves in water, in glass, in the eyes of those we love. Our magic is born of longing, of desire made visible. This distortion, it's like a scream in a language only my blood understands." He studied her, the tension in her jaw, the flicker of vulnerability beneath her usual composure. For the first time he realized how much it cost her to feel so much, to carry a sensitivity most wizards would never comprehend. "Will it hurt you?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Yes, but not as much as doing nothing." Before he could respond, she pressed both hands to the wall. A pulse of silver light flared from her fingertips, spreading like cracks in ice. The stones groaned, the air tore open with a sound like shattering glass, and the wall dissolved, not into rubble, but into a cascade of liquid mirror, pouring inward, like a waterfall frozen mid-fall. Beyond lay a chamber of infinite reflections, walls lined with broken mirrors floating in mid-air, each showing a different version of the world, some familiar, some horrifyingly wrong. 1,000 fleshes stared back, 1,000 Harrys, and at the center, suspended in a cage of twisted silver, hung the single perfect mirror, unblemished, untouched. Fleur took a step forward, her breath caught. "That's it," she whispered. "The heart of the fracture, the first mirror." The air in the abandoned shop on Diagon Alley clung thick with dust and the metallic tang of old magic. Shattered glass crunched beneath Harry's boots as he stepped closer to the remaining fragment of mirror, still upright, impossibly, in its gilded frame. The surface shimmered faintly, like oil on water, refusing to go dark, even though the enchantments within had long since unraveled. Fleur stood beside him, her silver hair pulled back tightly, her breath shallow. She hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, but Harry could feel the tension radiating from her. Her Veela senses, always raw near the rifts, were twitching like live wires. "This one, it still hums," she murmured, fingertips hovering just above the frame. "Not like the others. This one remembers." Harry crouched, brushing grime from the ornate silverwork, edging the mirror. Beneath the soot, delicate runes curled along the wood, ancient, angular, nothing like standard wizarding script. He pulled out his wand and whispered, "Revelio incantatem." A faint blue glow pulsed beneath the carvings, illuminating symbols that shifted ever so slightly, as if trying to avoid detection. "They're moving," he said, "not just hidden, active, like they're coded." Fleur knelt beside him, her presence close enough that he felt the warmth of her skin. "They're not just runes," she said softly. "They're coordinates. I've seen patterns like this in Veela star charts, used to trace ley lines between sacred places." Harry frowned. "So the mirrors aren't random, they're part of a network." And someone is using them to navigate, not just escape. Map. He studied the symbols again, sketching them quickly into his worn notebook. One in particular caught his eye, a looping spiral with a dot at its center, repeated 3 times along the lower frame. He'd seen it before, months ago, etched into the frost of a bathroom mirror at the ministry after a breach. At the time, he'd thought it meaningless graffiti. "Wait," he said, flipping back through the pages. "The first breach, Hogwarts, East Tower. The mirror there had this same mark, and the one in Prague, near Charles Bridge. I didn't understand then, but the pattern's the same. It's a sequence." Fleur leaned in, a breath stirring the edge of his ear. "Then each mirror leaves a trail, not just where the thief has been, but where they're going." Harry traced the spiral with his finger. "This isn't just a signature, it's a K, a way to stabilize the passage. Without it, crossing would be lethal." She went very still. "Then the Mirrorwalker isn't just stealing. They're preparing, building a path." A cold weight settled in Harry's chest. They thought of the reflections they'd seen, brief, ghostly glimpses of people who weren't quite real. A Hermione with cold eyes, a Sirius who never smiled, a Ginny who didn't recognize him. Echoes, warnings. What if the thief wasn't just moving between worlds, but trying to merge them? "The spiral," Fleur said, voice low. "In our old tales, it means the return of the lost. But it is also a warning. Those who walk the spiral must sacrifice something or become lost themselves." Harry looked at her. Her blue eyes held a flicker of something he couldn't name. Fear, perhaps, or memory. "You think they're not just a thief," he said slowly. "You think they're trying to come home." She didn't answer, but her hand, resting on the edge of the frame, trembled. Just once, before she pulled it away. Outside, the sky darkened. Rain began to fall, tapping against the broken windows like fingers seeking entry. And deep within the mirror's fractured surface, the runes pulsed once, softly, as if in reply. The glass did not shatter, it breathed. One moment Harry stood in the ruins of an abandoned chateau in northern France, wind whispering through ivy-choked arches, the cold edge of a November dusk biting his cheeks. The next, the full-length mirror before him pulsed like a heartbeat, its surface rippling with a liquid silver light. Fleur stepped forward, her hand brushing his arm, a fleeting warmth in the gathering chill. "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice low, lilting, edged with caution. He nodded. "It's the only one that's still active." She exhaled, that her breath fogged not in the air but on the mirror's surface, as though the reflection answered her. Then, together, they stepped through. No falling, no lurching, just a shift, like turning a page in a dream. They emerged on a cobbled path that spiraled through a garden Harry had never seen, and yet knew instantly. Roses climbed trellises in riotous bursts of crimson and gold, their perfume thick and sweet. Hedges shaped like animals stood, frozen mid-motion, foxes mid-leap, owls spreading wings. The sky above was twilight, but not of any single hour. The sun bled into moonlight along the horizon, as if time itself couldn't decide. "Not just not real," Fleur murmured, her fingers curling into her robes. "Not truly, no," Harry agreed, heart beating unevenly. "It's made of memories. As if in response, the garden shifted. The roses dimmed. The path cracked beneath their feet, moss creeping over stone. A distant laugh echoed, high, bright, unmistakably Ginny's. But when Harry turned, the garden arched away into shadow. Fleur inhaled sharply. A silver mist curled around her ankles, rising like breath from the earth. Her eyes, usually pale blue, flickered with a strange luminescence. The Veela, in her stirring, reacting to the unstable magic woven into this place. "It feels personal," she said. "Not just memories. Yours." He didn't answer. Ahead, the path forked. One side bloomed with summer sunlight and the sound of children playing. The other descended into a fog-laced courtyard, where a single swing swayed in an unfelt wind. He took the left path without thinking. The world folded around him. Suddenly, he stood in a small house, a kitchen. A woman with red hair, Lily, hummed as she stirred a pot on the stove. James leaned against the counter, glasses askew, laughing at something only he could hear. A toddler with messy black hair wobbled on unsteady legs toward Harry, arms outstretched. Harry's breath caught. He knew this wasn't real, knew it was illusion, memory spun into substance. But the warmth of the room, the scent of stew and old wood, the soft creak of floorboards, it all pressed against his chest like a weight. "Don't," Fleur said softly, appearing at his side. Her voice was gentle but firm. "It will only take more from you." He swallowed. "I never got to know them." "No," she said, "but this is not them. It's a shadow." A longing given form. As if offended, the kitchen flickered. The laughter stilled. The lights dimmed. Lily turned. Her eyes met Harry's, and for a heartbeat she smiled. Then the walls dissolved into mist. They were back in the garden, but now the hedges had grown taller, twisted into shapes that looked too much like people reaching, screaming. Fleur closed her eyes. "This place, it feeds on regret, on love not lived. We must be careful. Our hearts have a compass here, and the vulnerability." Harry looked at her. "What do you see?" She didn't answer at first. Then quietly, "A wedding, white dress, snow falling in July, a man whose face I cannot see, and—" She paused. "A child." He studied her profile, the sharp line of her jaw, the tension in her throat. He'd never thought of Fleur wanting children, never thought of her grieving what she hadn't had. Before he could speak, the ground trembled. The sky split, not with lightning, but with reflections, dozens of them. Mirrors hanging in midair, each showing a different moment. Harry holding a baby, Fleur in aurora robes, a version of them both standing side by side in a cottage garden. Older, weary, smiling, the thief's work, or perhaps the world's answer. "We can't stay," Harry said. "It'll consume us." Fleur opened her eyes. "Then we move, together, and we do not look back." But as they stepped forward, the path behind them vanished into fog, and the mirrors whispered their names. The glass exhaled cold, the breath of frost that curled across the chamber, like a living thing. Harry stepped forward, boots crunching on shards of mirrors scattered across the stone floor. Each fragment pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat, reflecting not the crumbling cathedral around him, but impossible corridors of light, twisting staircases suspended in air, and faces that looked like people he knew, but weren't quite right. Fleur stood behind him, her presence a quiet warmth at his back. She had been silent since they entered the mirror vault beneath Strasbourg. Her silver eyes narrowed, fingers pressed lightly to her temple. "It is not just the mirrors," she murmured. "It is star him star. He lingers in the in-between." Harry didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the largest remaining panel, a towering slab of mercury, black glass propped against the far wall. Its surface swirled, like oil in water, and within it, a shape was forming. Then he saw himself, but not himself. The man in the glass wore Harry's face, same scar, same green eyes, but the lines around them were deeper, harder. His hair was longer, wild and streaked with ash. He wore a tattered cloak lined with runes that pulsed like infected wounds, and his eyes, they didn't blink. They watched, waited. "Harry," Fleur said sharply, stepping closer, "do not look too long. It is not you." "No," the reflection said, voice smooth, familiar, yet wrong, like a record played too slow. "But it could have been, its star, should star have been." Harry's breath caught. The figure moved, pressing a hand against the inside of the glass. The surface rippled, and the sound of distant screams poured out, echoes from battles Harry had survived, but this version had not, or perhaps had fought too many. "You think you saved them," the reflection said, "but you left them broken. Ginny, Ron, Hermione. You left them picking up the pieces while you played the quiet hero in the Ministry archives." "That's not true," Harry said, but his voice wavered. "Isn't it? You ran, you always run. From the noise, from the weight of their expectations. From her star, Fleur." Fleur stepped between them. "Enough," the reflection smiled. A cruel twist of Harry's own lips. "And you brought the Veela. How poetic. Did you know she dreams of you, Harry? Not the savior, not the aurora, but the man who could have stayed, the man who could have loved her back." Harry flinched. Fleur didn't. "You are nothing but smoke and sorrow," she said, voice rising like a storm tide. "You feed on regret, yes, but you forget regret means we lived star. That's trough, we chose. He did. You did not." The glass trembled. "You don't understand," the reflection whispered. "I am what happens when the war never ends. When every choice leads to fire. When love is just another battlefield." Harry closed his eyes. Images flooded in. Ginny's face the day they parted, not in anger, but in quiet resignation. Ron's hesitant smile when Harry declined the Puddlemere tryout. The way Hermione had looked at him when he refused the head of magical law enforcement position, disappointment masked as pride. "I made my choices," Harry said, opening his eyes. "They burned, and I live with them." The reflection sneered. "Then live with this." The glass shattered outward, not into fragments, but into tendrils of shadow that lashed like whips, wrapping around Harry's arms, his chest, dragging him toward the mirror. He fought, but the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, of paths not taken, pressed down on him. The air turned thick, tasting of ash and old tears. Then light, a silver-gold radiance burst through the darkness as Fleur raised her hand. A pulse of Veela magic, raw, ancient, rippled through the chamber. The shadows screamed, recoiling. She stepped forward, her hair lifting as if caught in a wind from another world. "Look at me, Harry," she said, voice trembling, not with fear, but fire. Not at him, at me star, he star. He turned his head. Her eyes glowed like molten moonlight. "You are not him," she said. "You are star here, star. You breathe, you fight. You care, star, even when it hurts. That is not weakness. That is star, you star, you star." The shadows loosened. Harry gasped, pulling free. He stumbled back, and the mirror, now just broken glass, cracked one final time and went dark. Silence. Fleur lowered her hand, swaying slightly. Harry reached for her, catching her arm before she fell. She looked up, breathless. "You are heavier than you appear, Potter." He let out a shaky laugh. "And you're brighter than the sun." She smiled, faint but real. "Then perhaps we balance." Around them, the last echoes of the shattered reflection faded into silence. But Harry knew some doors, once opened, could not be fully closed. And somewhere, deeper in the maze of mirrors, something was still watching. The air in the abandoned Parisian opera house shimmered like heat, haze over cobblestones, thick with the scent of old dust and cold magic. Fleur stood before the largest of the mirrors, its gilded frame cracked in weeping silver mist. Her breath fogged in the chill, yet sweat prickled at her temples. The reflection showed not the grand, decaying theater behind her, but a sunlit courtyard, white stone, lavender hedges, children laughing in French, beaux bâtons. Her childhood home, and there at the center stood a younger Fleur, radiant, untouched by war or loss, surrounded by adoring students and professors who watched her with undisguised awe. But it wasn't just the memory that clawed at her. It was the way the reflection pulsed, like a second heartbeat beneath her ribs. The Veela blood in her, the ancient restless magic, screamed in protest. Her skin itched, her vision flickering between the real and the reflected. The girl in the mirror smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was colder, sharper, a smile that demanded worship, not friendship. "Fleur." Harry's voice was low, careful. He stepped beside her, his wand drawn but not raised. "You're shaking. I can feel it," she whispered, her fingers curling into fists. Not just the mirror, the other side. It pulls, like a tide in the bone. He didn't offer empty comfort. That was one of the things she'd come to respect about him, his silence when words would only bruise. But then he said, "It's not you they're afraid of. It's what they don't understand." She turned, startled. "You think I care about their fear, don't you?" His green eyes held hers steady. "You wouldn't be standing here, tense as a drawn bow, if you didn't." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Perhaps I am tired of being looked at like I am something exotic, something dangerous, even now, even after all this time." "Then stop running from it," he said simply. She blinked. "Excuse-moi, you carry it like a curse," he said, glancing at the mirror. "But it's part of you, like my scar, like my past. I spent years wishing it away, hating it, but it's mine, and pretending it doesn't exist, that's what hurts most." The reflection shifted. Now the courtyard was empty. Only the younger Fleur remained, but her hair had darkened, her eyes turned cold silver. She raised a hand, and the glass rippled, as if she meant to step through. Fleur took an involuntary step back. "She is what I could become. If I let it consume me, if I stop trying to be more." "She's not you," Harry said firmly. "And you're not her. But what if I am? What if the kindness, the restraint, it's all just performance? What if one day, the Veela takes over, and I become that woman who sees only power and hunger?" Harry moved then, not away, but closer. He reached out slowly and gently took her hand. His touch was warm, grounding. "Then I'll be there," he said. "Then I'll remind you who you are. Not what you fear, not what others expect. Fleur Delacour, brave, stubborn, infuriatingly graceful. The woman who stood in a graveyard and refused to let death have the last word." Her breath caught. The mirror flickered again, now showing only their joined reflections, two figures side by side in the dim opera house. The younger Fleur faded, her cold gaze dissolving into mist. "You do not have to face this alone," he added, softer now. "Not the mirrors, not the past, not what you are." Tears pricked at her eyes, rare, unbidden. She did not wipe them away. "You see too much, Harry Potter." He offered a small, crooked smile. "Had to learn, didn't I?" After everything, the mirror stilled. The silver mist receded. The glass was just glass once more. Fleur squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Mercy," she said, voice thick, "for not treating me like something fragile, or something to fear." He nodded. "Anytime." And for the first time since stepping into this cursed, shifting world, she felt not like a half-magic anomaly, but like herself, whole, seen. Rain tapped against the glass panes of the abandoned chateau, like hesitant fingers, each drop sending ripples through the warped reflections on the floor. Harry stood just inside the broken archway, his breath curling in the cold air, wand half raised. Fleur stepped beside him, her silver hair pulled back, but still catching the dim light like moonlit water. Her lips were pressed thin, her nostrils flaring slightly, a telltale sign. Her Veela senses were stretched taut. "This place, it hums," she murmured, one hand brushing the cracked stone wall. "Not just magic, something older, like breath beneath stone." Harry nodded. "The mirror's still active. I can feel it, like a pulse behind my eyes." They moved deeper into the hall, boots crunching on shattered glass. At its center stood a full-length mirror, its frame carved with serpentine figures that seemed to shift when not looked at directly. It wasn't whole. A spiderweb of cracks ran through the silvered surface, yet it reflected nothing. Not them, not the room. Only a slow swirl of mist, like smoke trapped behind glass. Fleur approached slowly, her arms crossed. "We shouldn't be here, this mirror. It's not meant to be crossed, not by us." Before Harry could respond, the temperature dropped. The mist within the mirror thickened, coiling into shapes. A figure, tall and robed, face obscured by shadow and silver light. It stepped forward, not through the glass, but star out star of it, as if emerging from water. Harry raised his wand. "Who are you?" The figure raised a hand, palm open. No threat, only stillness. "I am what remains," it said, voice layered. One tone human, another echoing from far away. "The last of the Mirror Keepers." Fleur inhaled sharply. "They're real." "You know the name," the entity said, turning its hooded face toward her. Then you know what is broken. Harry kept his wand steady. We're tracking someone, a thief, using these mirrors to move between worlds. The thief? The keeper let out a sound like wind through reeds. You chase a shadow. The thief is not the danger. The thief is a symptom. Fleur stepped forward, defiant despite the tremor in her voice. Then tell us what is. The keeper turned fully now, and for a moment the shadows beneath the hood parted. Harry glimpsed eyes, not human, but twin pools of liquid silver, swirling with constellations. The Mirrorwalkers do not steal. They unravel. They cut threads between worlds, believing they mend history. But every crossing weakens the veil. Every reflection stolen becomes a wound. Harry lowered his wand slightly. Who are the Mirrorwalkers? They were once guardians like me, keepers of balance, but grief twisted them. They lost someone vital, and sought to reclaim what was taken. Now they walk both worlds, stealing reflections to build a bridge, to bring back the dead. Fleur's breath caught. Berlin, they've already taken more than objects, the keeper continued. They've taken star echoes, fragments of souls that never lived, never died. You've seen them, haven't you? The others, the ones who look like those you love, but are not quite. Harry thought of the boy in the Paris mirror, his own face, but with Louis's eyes, laughing in a world where Voldemort had never marked him. He'd felt a pull so strong it ached. They're using the reflections to anchor their bridge, Harry said, understanding dawning. And each time they do, the worlds fracture more. The keeper inclined its head. One among them leads, the one you chase. But she does not act alone. There is another, a man with fire in his veins, and a name he no longer speaks. He walks unseen, opening doors the others cannot. Fleur's fingers cooled into her palms. But what happens when the bridge is complete? The mirror behind the keeper rippled. For a heartbeat, Harry saw two Londons superimposed. One familiar, one twisted buildings leaning at impossible angles, skies bleeding violet. Collapse, the keeper whispered. Worlds will bleed into each other. One will consume the other, or both will shatter. A gust of wind tore through the hall. The mirror cracked further. A deep splintering sound. The keeper staggered, its form flickering like a dying flame. They're coming, it said. They know you're close. Wait, how do we stop them? Harry demanded. But the keeper was fading, dissolving into mist that curled back into the glass. The last thing they heard was a whisper. Break the anchor. Not the thief. The heart of the bridge. Then silence. Outside, the rain fell harder. Fleur turned to Harry, her eyes wide, glistening. A man with fire in his veins. Harry nodded, cold settling in his chest. Someone we know. Someone who's died, and come back. And in the broken mirror, for just a moment, a face appeared. Scarred, grinning, red-haired. Gone before either could speak. The glass shimmered like oil on water, a thin film of silver rippling across its surface as Harry stepped through, his boots crunching on frost-covered cobblestones that hadn't been there moments before. He pulled his cloak tighter, breath curling in white plumes beneath a sky that seemed too dark, too starless. Fleur followed, her silvery hair catching the dim white like moonlight on a frozen lake, her fingers brushing the edge of the mirror frame as if testing its pulse. This is wrong, she murmured, voice low and strained. It feels torn. Harry turned, scanning the alley they'd entered. It looked like Diagon Alley, or what it might have been if time had gnawed at its edges. The shop signs hung crooked, their letters blurred, as though written in smoke. Ollivander's front door was ajar, but no light spilled from within. A cat with 3 eyes blinked at them from a windowsill, then vanished into the shadows without a sound. The last mirror, Fleur said, stepping forward cautiously, showed me myself, clear, whole. This. She gestured to the nearest window pane where their reflections stood, but only barely. Harry's face was smudged, as if seen through rain-streaked glass, and Fleur's image flickered, her eyes shifting from blue to violet and back again. It's not just the thief, Harry said slowly. Something's breaking the connection. Fleur exhaled sharply. It is not just the mirrors. It is the space between. The veil. When I was younger, during the tournament, I felt the pull of other magics, ancient ones. But this This is like standing in a room where the walls are vanishing. A gust of wind howled between the buildings, carrying whispers in a language Harry almost recognized, fragments of French, of Parseltongue, of something older still. The air shimmered again, and for a heartbeat, the alley transformed. Cobblestones became marble tiles. Flagstones cracked and bloomed with glowing ivy. The silence shattered with laughter, distant and bright. Then it was gone. Fleur staggered, clutching her temple. "I saw her," she whispered. "Gabrielle. But not as she is. Older. Wearing a wand on a chain, like a healer. And she didn't know me." Harry touched her arm. "Echoes. Reflections of paths not taken. They feel real," she said, voice trembling. "Too real. When I look into these mirrors now, it is not just my face I see. It is what I might have been, what I might still become. And its star aches star. He starred." He nodded. He nodded. He seen it too. Himself standing in a sunlit kitchen. Hair streaked with gray. A child's hand in his. Ginny's voice, soft with laughter. A life untouched by war. He'd stepped back before the image could take root. "We can't keep jumping blind," he said. "If the boundaries are collapsing, the next mirror might not lead anywhere at all." Fleur looked at him, her eyes sharp with something he couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also resolve. "Then we find the source. The first mirror. The one that began this fracture. And if it's already broken, then we mend it," she said. "Or die trying." A noise echoed from the end of the alley. A soft chime like glass striking glass. They turned. A mirror stood there, freestanding, its frame carved with runes. Harry didn't recognize. It showed nothing but a void. But as they watched, a figure stepped out. Not from the mirror, but star into star it. Back turned. Robes dark as ash. Harry drew his wand. "That's not us." Fleur's hand found his. "No, but it knows we're here." The mirror rippled once more, then went still like a pond after a stone sinks. The air tasted of salt and burnt metal. Somewhere far away, a bell began to toll. The air inside the labyrinth was sharp with the scent of ozone, and old silver, each breath catching like static on the tongue. Shards of mirror lay scattered across the floor, some upright like crooked tombstones, others splintered into jagged constellations beneath their feet. Harry stepped carefully, his wand lit with a narrow beam of blue light that flickered against the fractured surfaces. Every direction looked the same, endless reflections of himself, broken, multiplied, distorted. Some versions of him moved out of sync, tilting their heads when he didn't, smiling when he frowned. He ignored them. He'd learned quickly that they weren't just reflections. Fleur moved ahead, her silver blonde hair catching the dim light like spun moonlight. She kept one hand trailing along the nearest standing shard, her fingertips brushing the cold glass. Her breath fogged the surface in short bursts, but the mist never lingered. The Veela in her was restless. Harry could see it in the tension at the corners of her eyes, the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. She'd said little since they entered, only murmurs in French under her breath, and the occasional sharp intake when a mirror pulsed with unnatural warmth. "We should not be here," she whispered, her voice like winged over ice. "This place, it remembers pain." Harry glanced at her. "We don't have a choice. The thief came this way. I can feel it. The pull in my scar, faint, but it's there." She turned to him then, her eyes pale blue and depthless. "Your scar does not lie, but neither do mirrors in this place. They twist truth into something. Hungry." He swallowed. He'd seen it already, the way the reflections reached for him. Mouths forming words he couldn't hear. Once he'd seen Ginny's face in a shard, smiling, waving. He nearly reached out before Fleur yanked him back, her grip tight as iron. Not real, she'd snapped. Only echoes. Hungry ones. Now, a low hum began to vibrate through the floor, rising from the glass itself. The mirrors trembled, their surfaces rippling like water. Harry stopped, heart pounding. "Do you hear that?" Fleur went still. "It sings," she said. A psalm with no words, only longing. Then from the left a voice. "Harry." He turned. Ron stood in a tall, cracked mirror, whole and grinning, Hermione beside him, her arms crossed, eyes bright with amusement. "Took you long enough," she said. "We've been waiting." Harry's breath caught. They looked real, too real. The freckles on Ron's nose, the way Hermione's hair curled at her temples, even the familiar patch on Ron's jumper. "You're here?" "Here. We've been looking for you," Ron said, stepping forward, out of the mirror. His boots crunched on glass. "Blimey, this place is a mess." Fleur grabbed Harry's arm. "Non, do not listen. They are not them." "But they smell wrong," she hissed. "No warmth. No breath. Only reflection." Another step, and Hermione smiled. "Come on, Harry, we've got a way out. Just follow us." Harry hesitated. The pull in his scar flickered, uncertain. For a heartbeat he wanted to believe. He wanted to run to them, to feel the weight of Ron's hand on his shoulder, to hear Hermione scold him for being reckless. But then he noticed. Their shadows didn't move with them. They stayed fixed on the glass behind. Fleur stepped in front of him, her back straight, her voice low and resonant with Veela power. "You do not belong. This man is not yours to take." The false Ron's smile slipped. The false Hermione's eyes darkened. The mirror behind them began to crack, spiderwebbing outward. Then the ground heaved. Harry stumbled, catching himself on a shard that sliced his palm. Blood welled, dark and glistening. The reflections lunged, not at him, but at the blood. The glass shivered, reaching like fingers. Fleur raised her hands. A silvery light burst from her palms, washing over the maze. The false friend shrieked, soundless mouth stretching too wide, and dissolved into mist. The mirrors dimmed, the hum fading into silence. Harry knelt, pressing his hand to his chest. "I know," Fleur said softly. She knelt beside him, pressing a strip of enchanted silk to his wound. "But you did not. That is what matters." Above them, the fractured ceiling reflected a sky that wasn't there, stars arranged in patterns no astronomer would recognize. And somewhere, deep in the maze, a mirror cracked open. Rain tapped a steady rhythm against the glass of the abandoned apothecary in Prague, each drop fracturing the dim candlelight into trembling shards. Harry crouched beside the shattered mirror, its silvered surface cracked like frozen ice, tendrils of frost still clinging to the frame, despite the room's warmth. His breath curled in white wisps as he traced the edge with a gloved hand. "Still warm," he murmured. "He was here minutes ago." Fleur stood by the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the storm-lit street. The wind tugged at her pale hair, lifting strands like silver threads. She didn't enter. Not yet. Her fingers pressed lightly against the doorframe, eyes closed, breathing in the residue of magic. "It's not just a breach," she whispered. "It's a song, a wrong note in the air." Harry turned. A song, like glass humming beneath a fingernail, but deeper, older. She opened her eyes, pale blue and clouded with something between pain and recognition. He's not just passing through, he's calling to something. They'd followed the thief, this so-called Mirrorwalker, across 3 countries in 12 days. Vienna, Lyon, now Prague. Each time a mirror shattered from within. Items stolen not of gold or spellbooks, but of memory. A child's drawing from a Hogwarts classroom. A photograph of Sirius Black, laughing by the Black Lake. A vial of Ginny's perfume left in an old trunk. Trinkets, tokens. Why take them? And then there was the message, scratched into the back of the Prague mirror, written in a hand both elegant and feverish, were 6 lines in ancient runes. Harry had copied them into his notebook, fingers stiff with cold. Fleur had gone still the moment she read them. Star. When the silver turns to shadow, star, star, and the self sees what it lacks, star, star, the door will open for the sorrow, star, star, the cracked heart, the one who breaks, star, star, find the face behind the face, star, star, or watch the worlds drown in their own gaze. Star. It's a riddle, Harry said, flipping the notebook closed, but riddles have answers. This feels like a warning. Fleur stepped forward at last, her boots crunching over broken glass. She knelt beside him, her shoulder brushing his. A faint warmth radiated from her. A Veela's quiet hum beneath the surface. Or a summons, she said. The Mirrorwalker isn't stealing mementos. He's collecting reflections of loss. Grief has power, Harry. Especially when it's shared across realities. Harry frowned. You think he's trying to open something? I think he already has. She reached out, not touching the mirror, but hovering her hand above it. The air shimmered, like heat over stone. There's a pull here. Not just to another world, but to another star of ours. One where choices were different, where people lived or died. A gust of wind howled through the broken window. The candle flickered, then died. In the darkness, the mirror flared. For a heartbeat, it wasn't broken. Whole and gleaming, it showed not the ruined apothecary, but a sunlit kitchen, chipped blue paint, a kettle whistling on the stove. A woman with red hair and freckles turned, smiling, holding a cup. Star Ginny. Star but not Ginny. Her eyes were greater, her smile wider, freckles scattered like stardust. And behind her, a child laughed. Star their star child, maybe, a boy with messy black hair and Fleur's eyes. Then it vanished. Harry gasped. His chest ached. Fleur's hand trembled. That wasn't a memory, she breathed. That was a life. One we never lived. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken longing. Harry looked away, jaw tight. He'd spent years learning to live with ghosts. But this was a ghost of a future. Fleur stood slowly. He's not just a thief, she said. He's a guide, or a warning, and he wants us to see. She turned to Harry, her voice soft but certain. We're not hunting him, Harry. We're following him. The air tasted wrong the moment they stepped through. 1 second, Harry was standing in the ruins of an abandoned Parisian opera house, the cold stone arch of a shattered mirror looming behind them, its silvered surface now rippling like disturbed water. The next, the world twisted, and he was choking on air, thick with ozone, and something older, something like burnt parchment and wet stone. Fleur gasped beside him, her hand flying to her chest as if struck. "Murd," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely. "This is not our world." They stood at the edge of the forbidden forest, but the trees were wrong, twisted into spirals, their bark black and glistening like obsidian. Above, the sky pulsed with faint violet veins, as though the stars themselves were bleeding into the atmosphere. And ahead, rising from the dark hills, stood Hogwarts, but it was a warped reflection of the castle he knew. Towers leaned at impossible angles, connected by bridges of floating stone that drifted like leaves on a breeze. Windows pulsed with a soft internal light, shifting colors like oil on water. The great hall's stained glass shimmered, not with images of founders or house crests, but with moving scenes of faceless figures in long robes, whispering in a language that slippered just beyond comprehension. Harry took a step forward and the ground shivered. "No," Fleur said sharply, grabbing his arm. "Wait, the air. It burns through my veins, like the world is rejecting us." He looked at her. Her usual luminous composure was frayed. Strands of silver hair clung to her damp forehead, and her eyes, normally a clear blue, flickered with streaks of gold, the Veela in her reacting to the instability. "I don't belong here," Harry said quietly. It wasn't a guess. It was a feeling in his bones, a pressure behind his ribs, as if the castle itself were holding its breath, waiting for him to leave. The wind stirred, carrying whispers, not in any language, but in tones, in emotions, grief, longing. A child's laughter cut short. Fleur stepped forward, her movements cautious, graceful. The moment her foot touched the path leading to the gates, the air shimmered. The whispering stopped. The castle exhaled. "It accepts Star Me Star," she said, stunned. "That's impossible," Harry said. "This is Hogwarts." "It knows me. You died here," she said softly. He froze. She turned to him, her expression pained. "Don't you feel it? The magic here, it remembers. And it does not remember Star You Star." A cold weight settled in his stomach. He tried to step forward again, but the path repelled him, the stones shifting beneath his boots like they were alive. A low hum rose from the castle's foundations, a dissonant chord that made his teeth ache. Then a sound from within the courtyard. Footsteps. A figure emerged from beneath the archway, robed, hooded, but moving with a familiar gait. Harry's breath caught. It was Star, him Star. Harry, older perhaps, with lines around the eyes, a scar cutting across his left cheek that Harry didn't recognize. But the eyes, green, just like his mother's, were unmistakable. The other Harry stalked. He pulled back his hood, his gaze locked onto Harry, and for a moment there was no recognition. Then, something flickered. Horror, grief, guilt. "You shouldn't be here," the other Harry said, voice rough. "No one from that side should." Fleur stepped between them, her posture protective. "What happened here? What are you?" The alternate Harry looked past her. "At the castle. I made a choice, after the war. I stayed. I became headmaster. I bound my magic to the school, to keep it stable. But every time a mirror opens, the balance slips." "And you," Fleur asked, glancing at Harry, "you were meant to die in forest. This world remembers that." Harry swallowed. The weight of it pressed down, not just the truth of his own narrow escape from death, but the thought of a world where he hadn't come back. A world where Hogwarts had needed a sacrifice. The other Harry's voice dropped. "You're hunting the thief, but the thief isn't stealing. He's trying to mend. The mirrors were never meant to be doors. They were wounds, and someone is making them worse." A chime rang from the highest tower, clear, mournful. The ground trembled. "We don't have much time," the other Harry said. "The next shift is coming. If you're still here when it happens, you'll be unmade." Rain lashed against the stained glass of the abandoned chateau, distorting the moonlight into fractured blues and blood reds that crawled across the stone floor like living ink. Harry wiped a hand across his forehead, smearing soot and sweat. The air hummed, not with magic as he knew it, but with something older, something straining beneath the surface, like roots beneath cracked pavement. Fleur stood before a massive dust-shrouded portrait, her fingers hovering just above the canvas. Her breath came in measured puffs, her Veela senses taut as bowstrings. "This one, it remembers," she whispered. The painting had been hidden behind a collapsed bookshelf, its frame carved with runes that pulsed faintly when touched. It depicted a woman in silver robes, her eyes closed, hands pressed to a mirror that split her reflection in two, one side serene, the other twisted with sorrow. Behind her, shadowy figures stepped from glass into the world, their faces blurred as if seen through rippling water. "It's not just a portrait," Harry said, stepping closer. "It's a ward, a seal." Fleur nodded. "And it's failing." She reached into the folds of her cloak and withdrew a vial of pale liquid. Veela tears, harvested under a new moon. With careful precision, she uncorked it and let a single drop fall onto the lower corner of the frame. The runes flared, then dimmed, and the woman in the portrait gasped, her eyes snapping open, glowing like polished mercury. Harry stepped back, wand drawn. "Who are you?" The painted woman turned her head slowly, as though moving through water. Her voice came not from the canvas, but from the air itself, layered and ancient. "I am Elian, keeper of the veil between." Fleur exhaled sharply. "The first Mirrorwalker." "Not a walker," the voice corrected. "A warden. My sisters and I were tasked with maintaining the barrier when the world split, long before your ministry, before Hogwarts, before even the fall of Atlantis. We bound ourselves to the mirrors, to ensure no one crossed until the balance could be restored." Harry frowned. "Restored how?" Elian's gaze shifted to him, and for a moment he saw not the painted face, but a living woman, tired, noble burdened. The worlds were never meant to be separate. They breathe in tandem, one inhales as the other exhales. But when men sought immortality, they shattered the bond, creating a rift. We sealed it with sacrifice. But now, the seal weakens. Fleur's hands trembled slightly, because someone is breaking the mirrors. "No," Elian said, "because someone remembers, and desire, true, unyielding desire, is the key that turns the lock." A silence settled, thick with implication. Harry glanced at Fleur. She wasn't looking at the portrait. She was staring at her own reflection in a broken shard of mirror on the floor, and for a heartbeat he thought he saw another version of her, paler, with wings of light unfurling from her back, reaching for him. Fleur blinked. The vision vanished. "The prophecy," she said, voice low. "I thought it was myth, but it speaks of two, one of fire, one of shadow, who will either mend the worlds or unmake them." Harry swallowed. "And we're the ones walking through mirrors, chasing a thief who might be us from another life. Doesn't exactly scream heroes." Elian's image began to fade, the paint darkening. The Mirrorwalkers were not thieves. They were mourners. They crossed not for power, but for love, and every time they did, the veil thinned. The first to cross broke the seal, the last to return will decide what remains. The frame went dark. The hum in the air dropped to a whisper. Harry turned to Fleur. "Do you think that's why you feel pulled?" "When we're near the mirrors?" She didn't answer at first. Then, softly, "I dream of her, Gabrielle, but not as she is, as she could have been, whole, safe, happy. And every time I see her in the glass, I want to reach through." He understood then. The thief they hunted wasn't just stealing artifacts. They were chasing ghosts, just like they both were. And if the prophecy was true, one of them would have to choose between love and survival. The air in the mirror world tasted wrong, thin and metallic, like licking a cold coin. Harry stepped through the gilded frame of a shattered Venetian mirror, boots crunching on frost-laced glass that shouldn't have been there. Moments before, the reflection had shown only the dusty interior of an abandoned apothecary in Prague. Now the sky above was a bruised purple, split by jagged streaks of silver light that pulsed like veins. The ground trembled, not the deep rolling shudder of an earthquake, but something sharper, more erratic, like the world itself was cracking under pressure. Behind him, Fleur emerged with a gasp, one hand clutching the edge of the frame as if it might vanish. Her silver hair, usually so perfectly controlled, floated around her face as though underwater. "It's worse," she whispered. "The veil between it fights me now." Harry turned to her. "Can you still feel the thief?" She closed her eyes, lashes fluttering. A faint shimmer ran over her skin, Veela magic responding to the distortion. But it's like chasing smoke. He moves faster than he should, and the reflections, some are broken, some don't reflect at all." A low groan echoed through the ruined square. Stone statues leaned at impossible angles, their faces melted into sorrowful masks. Trees grew upside down from the ceiling of a fractured sky, roots clawing at clouds. This wasn't just a reflection of Prague, it was a memory of it, warped by time and magic gone awry. Harry tightened his grip on his wand. "We're running out of time," the ministry's reports. 7 more mirrors collapsed in the last hour. Not just here. London, Paris, Vienna, entire districts on both sides are going dark. Fleur opened her eyes, pupils dilated. The balance is breaking. The mirror world was never meant to sustain itself. It feeds on the real world, on choices, on echoes. But someone is taking too much. Pulling threads. They moved through the fractured plaza, stepping over glass that whispered as they passed. Fragments of conversations not yet had, or already forgotten. Harry caught a word in French, then a child's laughter that sounded like Ginny's. He flinched. "You hear them too?" Fleur asked softly. He nodded. "Like dreams left behind." A sudden tremor set to ripple through the ground. The air split with a sound like tearing silk. Ahead, a mirror embedded in a crumbling wall flickered. A shop window, pristine and whole, showing a bustling Diagon alley untouched by time. Then, for a heartbeat, it shifted. Harry saw himself, older, face-lined, glasses cracked, kneeling in front of the grave he couldn't read. The image vanished. He staggered back. "That wasn't me." "No," Fleur said, voice barely audible. "But it could have been." The ground heaved again, cracked spiderweb through the square, glowing faintly blue. From the fissures rose whispers, not from one world, but many. Voices overlapping, pleading, cursing, laughing. Harry felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a theft anymore. It was a collapse. "We have to find the source," he said, "before the mirrors start swallowing people." Fleur reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her touch sent a strange warmth through him. "Then we go to the heart, the first mirror, the one in the Louvre. If the thief is drawing power from the origin, that's where he'll be. And if we're too late?" She looked at him, her pale eyes reflecting the fractured sky. "Then we become echoes too." Another crack split the air. The shop window mirror shattered inward, not outward, glass imploding into nothingness. The silence that followed was deeper than sound. Harry took a breath. Then let's not be late. They turned toward the archway of broken glass that led to the next reflection, the path flickering like a dying flame. Somewhere beyond the veil, a clock was ticking down in a language no one could hear, except the mirrors, and they were beginning to scream. The air in the abandoned Parisian metro station tasted of damp stone and old magic, thick with the residue of broken enchantments. Harry's boots echoed too loudly against the cracked tiles as he moved forward, wand alight with a soft blue lumos that flickered at the edges, as if the light itself struggled to exist here. Fleur walked beside him, her posture taut, one hand resting lightly against the cold mosaic wall. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the dimness, and her breath came slow, measured, but Harry had learned to read the slight flare of her nostrils, the tension in her jaw. Something was wrong. "The mirror should be close," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel it, pulling." Harry nodded, though he didn't feel it the way she did. To him, the distortion was more a pressure behind the eyes, like standing too close to a storm about to break. They had traced the thief through 3 reflections already: a shop window in Prague, a rain-slicked puddle in Edinburgh, the still surface of a fountain in Vienna, each jump leaving them more disoriented, more aware that the rules of reality were fraying. Then, ahead, flickering in the far archway, like a dying television screen, the mirror appeared. It wasn't grand, just an oval frame of tarnished silver, cracked down the middle, suspended in mid-air without support. But through it, the station wasn't abandoned. Lights glowed, trains hummed, people moved, blurred, translucent, moving in reverse or sideways, as if time had forgotten how to flow. And there, standing before the glass, was the thief. Harry froze. The man, tall, cloaked in shifting shadows that clung like smoke, turned slowly. His face was obscured by a hood, but beneath it, light pulsed in rhythmic waves like a heartbeat made visible. "Stop," Harry called, raising his wand. The figure didn't move. Then, with deliberate slowness, he raised a hand, not in surrender, but in mimicry. His movements were a fraction behind Harry's, like an echo delayed. Fleur stepped forward, her voice low and urgent. "No, he's not real, not truly." "What do you mean?" Harry asked, eyes locked on the doppelganger. "He's a reflection," she said, her Veela senses prickling along her skin. "But not just from one world, from many. I can feel them, layered, overlapping, like voices in a dream you can't quite grasp." The figure tilted its head, and then, impossibly, it smiled. Harry's stomach dropped. The thief's form shivered, flickering through variations, once wearing a Hogwarts prefect badge, once holding a wand made of bone, once with eyes completely black. Each version lasted only a breath before shifting again. "He's not one person," Fleur whispered, her voice trembling with realization. "He's all of them, every choice, every path, every reality where he made a different decision." They're bleeding together. A cold wind swept through the chamber, though there was no source. The mirror cracked further, spider-webbing with golden light. From within, whispers began, soft, overlapping, speaking in languages Harry didn't know yet, understood in his bones. "Star, we are the ones who walked through glass. Star, star, we remember what you forgot. Star, star, you cannot stop the unraveling." Star Harry stepped back instinctively, but Fleur moved forward, her hand outstretched not toward the thief, but toward the mirror itself. "They're not stealing artifacts," she said, sudden clarity, sharpening her voice. "They're retrieving pieces of themselves, fragments lost between worlds. Every mirror they touch, it's not a doorway, it's a wound, and they're trying to heal it." Harry swallowed. "And if they succeed?" Fleur turned to him, her eyes luminous, haunted. "Then both worlds become one, or neither. I do not know which is worse." The doppelganger raised both hands now, and the mirror pulsed, a wave of force rippling outward. Harry threw up a shield charm just in time, but the impact knocked them both to the ground. When he looked up, the figure was gone. Only the mirror remained, and in its cracked surface for just a moment, Harry saw another version of himself. Older, wary, wearing a wedding ring he didn't recognize. Reach out as if to speak. Then the glass went dark. Rain lashed the cobbled streets of Edinburgh, like silver needles, stinging Harry's face as he sprinted through the narrow alley. The air shimmered ahead, not with heat, but with a sickly iridescence, like oil on water. He skidded to a halt, heart hammering against his ribs. Fleur was just behind him, her breath coming fast, her silver hair plastered to her cheeks. "It's not a mirror," she said, voice tight. There was no surface, no glass. It just appeared. Before them, hanging in midair, was a jagged tear in reality. It pulsed faintly, edges flickering like candle flames in the wind. Through it, Harry glimpsed a distorted version of the city, towers of black stone where none should be, silhouettes moving too quickly, too silently. The scent of ozone, and something deeper, older, like damp stone and burnt rose petals, drifted through the rift. "They're no longer bound by reflections," Harry muttered. "They're tearing through the veil." Fleur's hand found his arm. Her touch was warm, but her fingers trembled. "I can feel it in my blood, the distortion. It's like the air before a storm, but inside me, like my veins are humming." He turned to her, raindrops caught her lashes, and for a moment he saw not just the fierce, composed aurora, but the woman who had once stood beneath the Veela moon, untouched by time. Her eyes, usually so calm, were wide with something like fear, and something else, recognition. "We can't let it widen," he said. "If this spreads—" Another crack, like ice splitting, split the air. The rift shuddered, expanding by a handspan. A low hum rose from it, vibrating in Harry's teeth. From within, a figure stepped forward, tall, cloak, face hidden beneath a hood that seemed to drink the light. It didn't walk so much as glide, one foot lifting as if through water. "Merlin's beard," Fleur breathed. "It's him, the thief." Harry drew his wand. Expulso. The spell struck the rift's edge. Instead of closing, the tear flared violently, spilling a wave of cold that numbed Harry's skin. The thief raised a hand, and from his palm bloomed a mirror, not glass but liquid silver, floating in the air. He stepped through it, and both mirror and figure vanished. But the rift remained, and it was growing. "We have to collapse it," Fleur said, already raising her wand. Her lips moved in rapid French, ancient syllables that shimmered in the air like threads of light. The Veela magic responded to her call, weaving through the rain, coiling around the edges of the breach. Harry joined her, anchoring the spell with a counter-charm from the Department of Mystery's restricted texts. The two magics met, hers fluid and luminous, his sharp and grounded, and for a moment the rift began to shrink. Then the world screamed, not a sound, but a sensation, a tearing deep in the bones, in the soul. The air split again, this time 50 feet to their left. And then another, and another. Like fractures in glass, the breaches multiplied, spreading across the street, down the alley, up the walls of the buildings. Fleur staggered. "No, they're feeding each other, like cracks in ice." Harry grabbed her hand. "We can't hold it. We have to go." She resisted for a second, her face twisted with effort. "If we leave it, it'll take the city with it." "Come on." He pulled her back, sprinting as the breaches pulsed, bleeding light and shadow into the world. Behind them, a lamppost warped, stretching like taffy before snapping into something unrecognizable. Glass exploded from shop windows, not outward, but inward, swallowed by the rifts. They turned a corner, lungs burning. Fleur suddenly gasped, clutching her chest. "Fleur? I can hear them," she whispered. "Voices, echoes, not from here. From beyond. Children laughing, a woman singing. In French, my mother." Harry slowed, but kept her moving. "It's the thinning. The worlds are bleeding together. Memories, sounds, feelings." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "What if they're not just echoes? What if they're real? What if she's still alive there?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in the silence between heartbeats he'd heard it too. A child's voice calling, "Daddy," in a tone he hadn't heard in over 20 years. They reached the apparition point just as the sky above the city split open, not with lightning, but with light that wasn't light. A great silent wound in the heavens, revealing stars that didn't belong to their world. And somewhere, deep in the fractures, the thief was still walking. The air in the abandoned Parisian gallery tasted of dust and cold stone, thick with the residue of broken enchantments. Harry stepped over a shattered frame, his breath curling in the dim light that seeped through cracked skylights. Before him, the largest mirror in the room still stood, its surface not glass, but liquid silver, swirling like mercury caught in a slow storm. Fleur stood beside it, her posture rigid, her pale hair glowing faintly in the half-light. Her Veela senses flared like a warning candle in the dark. "It's not stable," she murmured, her voice low. "The boundary phrase here. One wrong step, and it doesn't just show you another world, it pulls you in." Harry didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the shifting surface. Shapes formed, blurred, then sharpened again. A street, a cafe, sunlight dappling, cobblestones. And then, a man, tall, messy-haired, grinning as he leaned over a table, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. Serious. Harry's breath caught. Not a memory. Not a ghost. A living man, weathered but whole, laughing at something someone off-screen had said. The scar on his cheek, fagged now, healed, twitched as he smiled. He wore a leather jacket, sleeves rolled up, a silver watch on his wrist. Harry recognized it. His own father's watch, the one that had stopped the night James died. "Non," Fleur whispered, stepping toward him, her hand brushing his arm. "Harry, look away." But he couldn't. The scene shifted. Sirius stood in a garden, ruffling the hair of a boy who couldn't have been more than 8. The child looked up, laughing, and Harry's chest cracked open. Green eyes, his own face, his son. "This isn't real," Fleur said, firmer now, gripping his wrist. "It's a reflection, yes, but not truth. It feeds on what you want." "He's alive," he raised. "They're alive. He raised me, son. And you were not there." Fleur's voice softened. "Perhaps you died, or vanished, or chose another path." "That is not your life, Harry. That is a shadow of what might have been." The mirror shimmered. The garden brightened. Sirius looked up, as if sensing something. His eyes, bright, alert, locked onto Harry's through the glass. He frowned. Took a step forward. Harry took one back. The mirror rippled. A low hum filled the room, vibrating in Harry's molars. The edges of the frame began to blacken, as if scorched by invisible fire. "It's pulling," Fleur said sharply. "It knows you want to step through." Harry's fingers twitched. One step. That's all it would take. One step. And he could hear Sirius's voice again. Could meet his son. Could tell them what? That he'd failed. Then he'd spent years haunted by their absence. "No," he whispered. But his feet moved. Fleur stepped in front of him, blocking the mirror. Her eyes, usually pale blue, flashed silver. Veela power surging. "You are not lost to me yet," she said. Her voice layered with something ancient, commanding. "Look at me, Harry, not the glass. Look at me." He blinked. The warmth of her hands on his face grounded him. The scent of her, vanilla and frost, cut through the mirror's pole. "You carry him here," she said, pressing a hand to his chest. "Not in that world. Here, in your breath, in your choices. That is where he lives, not in a lie." The mirror groaned. The image of Sirius reached forward, hand pressing against the inside of the glass. A crack splintered across the surface. Fleur yanked Harry back, just as the mirror exploded inward, not outward, but into itself, collapsing like a dying star. The room plunged into silence. Harry sank to his knees, trembling. The weight of what he'd almost done pressed down like stone. Fleur knelt beside him, her voice quiet. "We all have doors we wish to open, but some doors should remain shut." He looked at her, really looked. Saw the faint tremor in her hands, the shadows beneath her eyes. "Did you see something too?" he asked. She didn't answer. But the way she looked at the shattered mirror, like it had shown her something she wasn't ready to face, told him everything. The air in the abandoned Parisian metro station hung thick with the scent of dabbed stone and ozone, a sharp tang that clung to the back of Harry's throat. Flickering torchlight danced across cracked mosaic tiles, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. Before them, a fractured mirror stood propped against a crumbling pillar, its surface shimmering like disturbed water, reflecting not the decaying station, but a grand candlelit ballroom, empty yet humming with residual magic. Fleur stepped forward, her silver hair catching the dim light like moonlight on frost. Her hand hovered near the glass, fingers twitching. "I can feel it," she murmured, voice low and strained. "The veil, it trembles, like a thread pulled too tight." Harry gripped his wand tighter, eyes scanning the shadows. "He's here, I can feel it too, like static under the skin." A figure emerged from the mirror's depths, stepping through as though parting a curtain. He was young, no older than 20, with pale, almost translucent skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore robes that seemed stitched from twilight, shifting in hue with every movement. In one hand he held a small, ornate hand mirror, its frame carved with runes that pulsed faintly. "You followed," the boy said, voice soft, almost dreamlike. "I felt your footsteps in the glass." "We're not here to harm you," Fleur said, stepping slightly in front of Harry. Her Veela aura flared subtly, a ripple of warmth in the cold air. "But you've crossed lines no one should. People are vanishing, worlds are bleeding." The boy tilted his head, studying her. "Vanishing, or returning. You speak of harm, yet you stand in a place that was never meant to be forgotten." He gestured behind him toward the reflection of the ballroom. "Look." Harry hesitated, then stepped closer. The mirror showed more now. A woman in emerald robes laughing by a marble pillar. A man with dark hair and a familiar crooked smile raising a glass. His breath caught. "Lily," he whispered. "Not his mother. Not exactly, but a version of her. Older, alive, radiant. And beside her, serious, whole and unbroken by Azkaban's cruelty." Fleur gasped softly. "Gabrielle." In the reflection, a younger version of her sister danced across the floor, twirling in a gown of sapphire silk, her face alight with joy. Joy Harry knew had been stolen too soon in their world. "They're echoes," the boy said gently. "Fragments of paths untaken. The Mirrorwalkers don't steal. We gather. We preserve." "Preserve?" Harry turned, voice rough. "People are disappearing from our world. Families are torn apart." "Because the veil is thin," the boy replied. "Because the balance is breaking. We're not causing the fractures. We're trying to mend them. My master, he's not a thief. He's a weaver. He collects what slips through the cracks before it's lost forever." Fleur frowned, her voice trembling. "And what of those left behind? The ones who mourn?" The boy met her gaze unflinching. "What of those who never were? The lives unlived, the love unspoken. The Mirrorwalkers, remember them. We give them sanctuary." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant drip of water and the faint echo of phantom music from the other side of the glass. Harry looked back into the mirror. Lily turned, her eyes meeting his, green, so like his own, and for a heartbeat he thought she saw him. Then she smiled at Sirius, and the moment passed. "We don't understand," Harry said slowly. "But if your master's intent isn't destruction, then why hide? Why run?" The boy's expression darkened. "Because there are others who would shatter the mirrors, destroy the echoes, call them abominations. They fear what they don't understand. My master protects what remains." Fleur closed her eyes, a single tear tracing down her cheek. When she opened them, her voice was steady. "Then let us speak with him, not as enemies, as those who have also lost." The boy studied them both, then nodded once. "One chance. Step through. But know this. Once you enter the in-between, the reflection changes you. Truths echo louder there. And some truths are heavier than grief." The air in the Silver City tasted like frost and old magic. Harry stepped forward, his boots whispering across a bridge of translucent crystal that arched over a canal of liquid mercury, its surface still and perfect, reflecting not their faces but shifting scenes. Hogwarts on fire, the Ministry in ruins, a child with Lily's eyes reaching out through the silver. He flinched and looked away. Fleur followed, her breath forming delicate spirals of vapor in the frigid air, each exhalation catching the pale moonlight like gossamer threads. Her silvery hair seemed to glow in his place, alive with its own inner luminescence, as if the city remembered her Veela blood and answered it. "Everything is glass," Harry murmured, running a gloved hand along the railing. It wasn't cold, it wasn't warm. It simply was star, humming faintly beneath his touch, like a sleeping dragon's breath. Towers spiraled upward, not of stone or steel, but of fused mirror fragments, their surfaces shifting in slow, hypnotic patterns. Faces flickered within them, some familiar, some not. Whispers threading through the air like half-remembered dreams. "Not just glass," Fleur corrected, her voice low, lilting with caution. "Memory given form. Each pain, it holds a moment, a choice, a life that might have been." She closed her eyes briefly, her brow furrowing. "I can feel them, pulling, like tides beneath my skin." Harry glanced at her. The city affected her more deeply than he'd expected. Her usual composure had thinned, revealing something raw beneath. The Veela and her reacting to the unstable boundary, drawn and repelled all at once. When she opened her eyes, they shimmered, faintly opalescent. They moved forward in silence. The bridge led to a plaza paved in hexagonal tiles of smoky quartz, each etched with runes that pulsed faintly blue. At the center stood a fountain, but instead of water, it spilled strands of light, silver ribbons coiling into the air before dissolving into mist. Around it, figures stood motionless. Reflections, or something more? One turned. Harry froze. It was him, but not. This version wore robes of deep indigo, a silver phoenix insignia over his heart, and his eyes, they were whole. No lightning scar marred his forehead, no pain haunted the corners of his mouth. He looked at peace. "You shouldn't be here," the other Harry said, voice calm, resonant. "She'll come for you." "Who?" Harry asked, though he already feared the answer. "The one who walks between, the one who broke the first mirror." Fleur stepped forward, her posture regal, despite the unease in her stance. "You are not him, you are an echo." The reflection smiled, a sad knowing thing. "Aren't we all?" A ripple passed through the plaza. The glass beneath their feet flickered, and for a heartbeat, Harry saw Fleur, this Fleur, collapsed in snow, her breath shallow, her hair dull as ash. He blinked, and it was gone. But the image clung. "She's close," Fleur whispered. "I can feel her, not just near, star within star." Flew. A sound like shattering chandeliers echoed from above. They looked up. The sky, what passed for sky here, was cracking. Long fissures spiderwebbed across the dome of the city, leaking strands of starlight that didn't belong to any world. Harry knew. Through one widening rift, a figure stepped down onto a floating pane of glass. Tall, draped in a cloak of shifting mirrors, she moved like smoke given shape. Her face was obscured, but her presence sent a jolt through Harry's bones. Familiar, star, terrible star. Veela Neller, a Bellatex, he breathed. "No," Fleur said sharper now. "Not her, a reflection, but one that thinks it's real." The figure raised a hand. The mirrors around them star-twisted star, folding inward. Another bridge formed, leading to a tower at the city's heart, a spire of black glass, pulsing like a diseased heart. "She wants us to follow," Harry said. "She wants you to choose star," Fleur corrected. "That's what this place does. It shows you what you've lost, so you'll reach for it, even if it destroys everything." Harry looked at her, really looked. In this fractured light, she was more than beautiful. She was star, true star. In a way he'd never allowed himself to see before. Not the perfect Bosbaden's champion. Not the wife he'd allowed himself to see before. Not the perfect Bosbaden champion. Not the wife, the mother, the legend. Just Fleur, strong, afraid, alive. "Then we don't choose alone," he said. And together they stepped onto the new bridge, the glass singing beneath their feet, the city holding its breath. Rain tapped softly against the grimy window pane of the abandoned apothecary in Prague, the kind of steady, cold drizzle that seeped into bones and lingered. Harry crouched beside a shattered mirror frame, its silvered surface cracked like Westerpoving, pulsing faintly with residual magic. Fleur stood a few paces behind, her breath curling in white wisps despite the mild chill. She had insisted on coming, again, despite the ministry's warnings, despite Harry's quiet unease about working so closely with someone whose every movement seemed to ripple through the air like heat over sand. "It's still warm," Harry murmured, fingertips hovering just above the broken glass. "He was here, recently." Fleur didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fixed on the mirror. Not the broken one Harry examined, but a smaller oval shard leaning against the wall, half buried in dust and dried herbs. It wasn't supposed to work. It wasn't even whole. But it shimmered, just slightly, as if breathing. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Fleur, don't," Harry said, turning. But it was too late. The shard flared. Not with the cold blue light of a Mirrorwalker's passage, but with something softer, warmer, golden, like candlelight through old honey. And then the surface rippled, not showing Fleur's reflection, but another scene entirely. A small stone cottage, smoke curling from the chimney, snow dusting the roof. Inside, a woman with red hair, and a familiar gentle smile, rocked a child in her arms, humming. Harry sat in an armchair nearby, sleeves rolled up, reading a storybook aloud in a low, tender voice. A dog, scruffy, black, unmistakable, lay curled at his feet, and behind them on the wall a framed photograph. Harry, younger, laughing with a man who looked just like Sirius. Fleur's breath caught. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. But it felt true star in a way that ached. She turned, startled, as Harry grabbed her arm. His face was pale. Not angry, worse, exposed. "I didn't mean to," she began, but her voice cracked. He let go of her arms slowly, stepping back. The warmth in the shard's vision dimmed, the image fading like mist under sunlight. "That wasn't supposed to be visible," he said quietly. "Not to anyone." "I know," she whispered. It was a private reflection. He didn't answer. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might leave. Just turn and walk out into the rain, ending this partnership before it had truly begun. But then he exhaled, long and slow. "It's not real," he said. "Just echoes. The mirrors don't just show other worlds. They pull out what we wish for. What we miss." Fleur looked down at her hands. Her Veela senses still hummed, unsettled. The air between them felt charged, fragile, as if one wrong word might shatter something far more delicate than glass. "I saw my sister," she admitted, eyes still lowered. "Gabrielle, but not as she is. Younger, laughing in a garden I've never seen. My mother was there. Alive." She swallowed. It felt like losing them all over again. Harry looked at her then, not with pity, but with something deeper. Understanding, recognition. "We're all chasing ghosts," he said. The rain eased. A sliver of moonlight pierced the clouds, striking the broken mirror. For a heartbeat, the glass glowed, not gold, not blue, but something in between. Fleur lifted her gaze. "Do you think that world could have been real? That life?" Harry's fingers brushed the edge of the shard, careful. "Maybe, or maybe it's just the shape of my regret. I never let myself imagine a family. Not like that, not after everything." She took a step closer. "But you want it." He didn't deny it. And in that silence, something shifted, subtle, undeniable. Not romance, not yet, but the quiet crumbling of walls. The acknowledgement of wounds worn beneath the surface. Fleur reached out, not touching the mirror, but letting her hand rest near his, close enough to feel the warmth. "We find the thief," she said softly, "and then we make sure the mirrors don't steal anything more." The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of burnt silver and old parchment, a metallic tang that clung to the back of Harry's throat. Before them, the mirror stood cracked down the center, its surface no longer reflecting the stone walls of the hidden crypt beneath Prague, but a swirling vortex of shifting colors, amber, deep violet, and a cold, pulsing blue. Fleur held her arm out, her fingers trembling slightly, as she kept the protective charm, a delicate web of Veela-made light, spun between them and the artifact. "It's unstable," she murmured, her voice low, almost reverent. "I can feel it, like a heartbeat beneath the glass." Harry stepped forward, wand drawn but not raised. "That's what we're here for, to find out why." The mirror rippled. A face emerged, not solid, but woven from smoke and might, ancient and genderless, with eyes like twin eclipses. "The oracle. You have crossed many reflections to reach me," it intoned, the voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "Yet you are not the one the glass chose." Fleur flinched. "We seek the thief. He's tearing the veil between worlds." The thief? The oracle's image shifted, fragments of other faces flickering beneath its surface. Lily Potter, laughing in a sunlit kitchen. Bill Weasley, whole and unscarred. Harry himself, older, with a wedding band on his finger, and a child's hand in his. He is not a thief, he is a guardian, and the veil is not being torn. It is dissolving. Harry's breath caught. "Dissolving? What do you mean?" "The balance is broken," the oracle whispered. "For centuries, the Mirrorwalkers maintained the separation, those who could pass between reflections without collapsing the pathways. But the last of them vanished long ago. Now the worlds remember each other. They ache, and when two realities long denied begin to remember, they reach, they pull, they merge. Fleur closed her eyes, her Veela senses flaring. That's why I feel echoes, whispers in my blood. It's not just the magic, it's the worlds calling to one another. The oracle turned its hollow gaze to her. You feel it because you are a bridge. Your blood, part human, part being from beyond, resonates with the in-between, and he, it nodded toward Harry, carries a soul too familiar with death to be bound by one world alone. Together, you are attuned. Harry frowned. So the thief, he's trying to stop the merge. He has spent years sealing fractures, the oracle said, closing doors before they become wounds. But the damage is spreading. The mirrors are no longer just doorways. They are mouths, hungry for connection, and soon they will open wide enough to swallow both worlds whole. A silence fell, broken only by the soft hum of Fleur's charm, as it strained against the mirror's pull. Why hasn't anyone seen this coming? Harry asked. Because denial is a powerful spell, the oracle replied. Your world prefers order, hers prefers beauty. That it wished to believe their perfection was built on separation. But the truth cannot be mirrored forever. Fleur stepped closer, her voice steady now. How do we stop it? The oracle's form flickered. You must find the first glass, the original mirror, forged when the worlds split. Only through it can the balance be reset. But the ritual requires sacrifice. One must remain behind, trapped between realities, to anchor the seal. Harry looked at Fleur. Her silver blue eyes met his, full of something he couldn't name. Fear. Yes, but also resolve. And the thief? He asked. He is already there, the oracle whispered. Waiting in the shattered hall beneath London Bridge. He carries the key, but he cannot complete the ritual alone. He needs those the mirrors accept. Those who are remembered in both worlds. The mirror trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. You are running out of time, the oracle said, fading. When the reflections begin to bleed, when you see yourself twice in one glass, then it will be too late. The image collapsed inward, the mirror going dark. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Fleur turned to Harry, her voice barely above a breath. We have to go to him, before the worlds forget where one ends and the other begins. Rain fell in silver sheets across the abandoned square, blurring the edges of shattered reflections that littered the cobblestones like broken teeth. Harry crouched beside a cracked mirror frame, its surface still flickering with ghostly images, half-formed faces, inverted skies, the echo of a clock tower chiming 13. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath curl into mist that didn't quite belong to this world. The air tasted wrong here, too sweet, like burnt sugar and old perfume. Fleur stood a few paces behind him, her white blonde hair clinging to her neck in damp strands. She hadn't spoken since they'd escaped the last mirror house. Not really. Just sharp warnings, clipped directions, the occasional hiss of pain when the Veela energy in her blood flared against the distortions. But now, as the rain softened to a hush, she stepped forward, her boots silent on the wet stone. It's getting worse, she said, voice low. The mirrors. And listen now. Not just reflect. Harry nodded, not looking up. They know we're close. She knelt beside him. Close enough that her sleeve brushed his arm. A faint warmth radiated from her, not from the chill in the air but from within. Veela fire banked low, pulsing like a second heartbeat. When I look into them, I see star her star. He finally turned. Gabrielle, Fleur's jaw tightened. Not as she is, as she might have been. In a world where I was not her sister, where I was nothing to her. Her voice cracked just once. And you see him star. Don't you? Harry looked away. The mirror had shown him serious, whole and laughing, stepping through the veil like it was nothing more than a curtain. He'd reached out. He'd almost believed. It's not real, he said, but the words felt hollow. No, Fleur whispered. But its star feels star real. That is the danger. The silence settled between them, not heavy but deep, like water over stone. The rain had stopped. The sky, neither fully night nor day, held its breath. In the broken mirror between them, their reflections shimmered, then shifted. Not distorted, not fractured, but younger. Harry saw himself at 20, face unlined, eyes without shadows. Fleur saw herself at Beauxbatons, standing beneath a willow, a letter trembling in her hand. And then, impossibly, their reflections turned toward each other. Not toward their own images, but toward each other's. Harry sucked in a breath. That shouldn't happen. Fleur didn't move. Her real hand, trembling slightly, rose toward the glass. In that world, she murmured, we met differently. Not at Hogwarts. Not as rivals. As friends. Lovers, perhaps. The reflection of young Harry reached out, palm flat against the glass. So did the reflection of young Fleur. Where their hands met in the mirror, light pulsed, soft, golden, like a heartbeat made visible. Harry felt it in his chest, a tug, a warmth spreading behind his ribs, unbidden. He looked at Fleur, really looked, not as a partner, not as a Veela with secrets, but as a woman who had carried grief like a second skin, who still smiled when she thought no one was watching. I never thanked you, he said. For what? For not treating me like the chosen one. For seeing just Harry. She smiled, faint, sad. And you do not flinch from my fire. Most do. Their eyes held. The mirror between them flared, not with images, but with light. A thread, thin and luminous, spiraled with the glass, twinning once around Harry's wrist, once around Fleur's. It didn't burn, and star connected star. Then the square trembled. Then the square trembled. The mirror cracked down the center, the golden thread snapping like a plucked string. The reflections vanished, replaced by a swirling void. From the darkness, a whisper, two voices, layered, speaking as one. Star. You are not supposed to find each other here. Star. Fleur stood, pulling Harry up with her. We should go. But he didn't move right away. He stared at his wrist, where the faintest golden line still glowed, fading slowly. What was that? She met his gaze, her blue eyes luminous. I do not know, but the mirrors are not just doors, Harry. They are hearts, and ours. They have begun to beat in time. The air in the abandoned cathedral tasted of damp stone and burnt ozone, thick with the residue of torn magic. Moonlight fractured through the skeletal remains of stained glass, casting jagged patterns across the cracked marble floor, patterns that didn't quite stay still. Harry's breath curled in front of him, white and fleeting, as he stepped carefully over a mosaic of shattered mirror shards, each piece reflecting not the cathedral around them, but fragments of other worlds. A city skyline under twin suns, a forest of floating trees, a battlefield frozen mid-explosion. This way, Fleur whispered, her voice low, but edged with urgency. She stood near the far altar, where a towering mirror, intact, yet visibly weeping silver trails down its frame, pulsed like a dying heart. Her hand hovered just above the surface, fingers twitching. Veela senses, Harry remembered. She could feel the ripples in reality, the pull of the in-between. He moved to her side, wand drawn, the cold weight of the mission pressing against his ribs. He's still in there? We, just beyond. But the threshold is weakening. If we wait too long, we may not be able to follow, and if it collapses while we're crossing, we'll be torn apart, Harry finished. He didn't need to ask. They'd seen what happened to the last agent who tried to cross a failing portal. Limbs stretched across 3 realities, screaming in voices that didn't belong to the same time. Fleur turned to him, her silver blue eyes sharp in the dim light. You are certain you wish to do this, Harry? Once we step through, there is no guarantee we will return the same. If we return at all. He looked at her, really looked. Not just the polished ministry expert, the composed Veela-blooded witch, but the woman who'd stood by him through cursed ruins and forgotten spells, whose breath had quickened when they'd glimpsed an alternate Ginny laughing in a sunlit kitchen, unchanged by war. He'd seen the flicker in her eyes then, regret, desire, things left unspoken. I have to, he said, not just because he's stolen 6 enchanted mirrors and left reality cracking in his wake, but because I've seen what's on the other side, versions of us, lives we didn't live. And if he keeps tearing holes like this, those worlds won't just be echoes. They'll bleed into ours, and then nothing will be real. Fleur studied him a moment longer, then gave a single nod. Then we go together. She placed her palm flat against the mirror. The silver trails surged upward, spiraling around her arm like living smoke. Harry reached out, gripping her wrist, more for grounding than protection, and stepped forward. The world inverted. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No up, no down, no sound, no breath. Then sensation roared back in a flood. The smell of wet earth and copper, the taste of static on his tongue, the sensation of falling through layers of glass, each one whispering fragments of forgotten conversations. They landed hard on even ground, rolling apart. Harry groaned, pushing himself up onto his elbows. They were in a forest, but wrong. The trees were blackened, their bark peeling like old parchment, and the sky above was a bruised violet, split by jagged lines of light that flickered like broken circuitry. And ahead of them, a figure in a tattered cloak sprinted between the trunks, a satchel of glowing mirrors slung across his back. After him, Harry shouted, scrambling to his feet. Fleur was already moving, her movements fluid, inhumanly fast. He's heading for the Nexus. He must be trying to reach the original. The what? The first. Mirror. The one that began it all. If he activates it with the others, he'll unravel everything, Harry finished, heart pounding. They ran, dodging roots that twitched like snakes, leaping over cracks in the earth that pulsed with cold light. The air grew thinner, heavier. Harry's scar prickled, not with pain but with resonance, as if something deep in this fractured world recognized him. Then they burst into a clearing. At its center stood an ancient stone archway, framing a mirror so old, its surface looked like frozen mercury, and the thief stood before it, hand outstretched, chanting in a language that slithered between syllables. Fleur screamed, no, but it was too late. The mirror flared, the ground trembled, and with a sound like tearing silk, the thief vanished into the silver depths. Harry skidded to a halt, chest heaving. The archway shuddered, cracks spreading across its surface. Has gone, Fleur said, voice hollow. For now, Harry said, stepping forward. But he'll surface again, and when he does, we'll be waiting. Behind them, the sky split wider. A new reflection flickered into view, a city of spires and fire, where two figures stood hand in hand watching them. Harry didn't look away. We're not done yet. The air in the abandoned Paris metro station tasted of rust and damp stone, thick with a residue of magic that had no business being there. Harry's breath curled in pale wisps as he stepped over cracked tiles, the beam of his wand cutting a trembling path through the dark. Behind him, Fleur moved like a shadow given form, her silhouette sharp against the crumbling mosaic walls. The mirror at the end of the platform, once a simple concierge mirror in a forgotten staff room, now pulsed with a sickly silver light, its surface rippling like oil on water. It's weakening, Fleur whispered, her voice low, edged with something Harry couldn't name. The veil between us and star them star, it's not just thin, it's tearing. He glanced at her. Her eyes, normally a clear, icy blue, were flickering with a strange inner fire, strands of silver weaving through her platinum hair like threads of lightning. The Veela in her was reacting to the distortion, sensing what he could only feel as a pressure behind his ribs, a hum beneath his skin. Then the mirror scar splintered star. Not shattered, star splintered star, like glass cracking in slow motion, across dimensions. A web of black fissures spread from its center, and from within, something began to push star through. Harry raised his wand, Pertigo. The shield barely formed before the first creature lunged. It was a reflection, but wrong, twisted, elongated, with too many joints and eyes that wept black smoke. Its fingers scraped the ground like claws, and its mouth opened in a soundless scream. More followed, shadows wearing the shapes of men, of animals, of things that had never lived but had been dreamed in nightmares. Fleur moved before Harry could blink. She stepped forward, her arms lifting as if in prayer, and then she sang star. The sound was not loud, but it cut through the air like a blade forged from moonlight. A wave of silver light erupted from her, rippling outward in concentric circles. The creatures shrieked, not in pain, but in recognition, as if they knew her, as if something deep in their fractured souls remembered what it meant to be whole. One lunged at Harry from the side, its jaw unhinging too wide. He twisted, casting a blasting curse, but the spell passed through it like mist. Then Fleur was there, her arm across his chest, shoving him back as she unleashed a burst of raw energy. The creature dissolved into screaming vapor. "They're not real," she gasped, her voice strained. "Not truly, but they remember star. They remember pain, fear, hatred. That's what fuels them." Another crack split the air, and from the mirror stepped a figure that made Harry's blood turn to ice. Lily Potter. She stood just as he'd seen her in dreams, red hair framing a gentle face, eyes the same green as his, but her mouth was sewn shut with black thread, and her hands were fused together in prayer. She took a step forward, silent, her eyes pleading. Harry's breath caught. "No, that's not. She is not your mother," Fleur said sharply, gripping his wrist. "Look at her. Star. Really star look." He forced himself to see. The woman's shadow didn't match her movements. Her feet didn't touch the ground. And behind her, in the mirror, another version of her stood, whole, smiling, waving, beckoning. "It's a lure," Fleur whispered. "They feed on longing, on regret." The lily thing reached for him. Fleur stepped between them, and Star roared Star. Which Star? It wasn't human. It wasn't even fully Veela. It was something older, purer, a cry of defiance that split the air like thunder. Her hair lifted as if caught in a storm, her eyes blazing white. The mirror trembled, then Star screamed Star in response, the sound vibrating through stone and bone. The creature of Lily staggered back, unraveling like thread pulled from a spindle. But more were coming. Dozens, hundreds. Faces Harry knew. Sirius, Lupin, even Cedric Diggory, all twisted, broken, reaching. Fleur turned to him, her voice raw. "We cannot fight them all, Harry. Not here, not like this." He nodded, heart-pounding. "Then we close it, now." She took his hand, and for the first time he felt the full force of her power. Not just beauty, not just magic, but Star will Star. A fire that refused to be extinguished. Together they raised their wands, and the world cracked open. Rain lashed the cobbled streets of Prague like silver needles, each drop bursting into mist the moment it struck the ancient wards humming along the rooftops. Harry crouched behind a shattered fountain, breath ragged, wand clenched so tight his knuckles burned. Across the square, a mirror, once set into the arched window of a closed apothecary, now stood upright on the ground, its surface swirling like oil on water. From it stepped three figures, draped in shifting cloaks of reflected light, their faces blurred as if seen through warped glass. Mirrorwalkers. A blast of emerald fire erupted from one's hand, striking a lamppost that screamed as it twisted into a grotesque spiral of molten iron. Civilians screamed, scrambling into alleyways, but not all were fast enough. Her child stumbled, frozen in terror, as the air around her shimmered, another mirror forming midair, ready to pull her into the unseen world beyond. "No," Harry growled, surging forward. "Potato Maxima!" The shield flared into being just as a second bolt of energy slammed into it, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the magical barrier. He gritted his teeth, holding firm, but knew he couldn't maintain it for long. Then warmth bloomed in the air, golden, radiant, unmistakable. Fleur stepped beside him, her silver hair lifted by a wind that wasn't there, her eyes alight with Veela fire. Her presence alone stilled the rain in a small radius around them, droplets hanging suspended like glass beads. "They are not merely stealing," she said, voice low and edged with fury. "They are unraveling the veil. Each passage weakens the boundary. Another few minutes, and the city will fracture." Harry nodded, jaw tight. "We stop them, now." She raised a hand, and the air shimmered with heatless flame. Somnium vinculum. Ribbons of light lashed out from her fingertips, wrapping around the nearest Mirrorwalker. The figure shrieked. Not a human sound, but something hollow, like glass breaking under water, as the spell bound their reflection to their own image, freezing them mid-step. The mirror behind them flickered, threatening to collapse, but the other two reacted fast. One spun, hurling a shard of solidified light that sliced through the air toward Fleur. Harry lunged, knocking her aside. The shard buried itself in the stone where she'd stood, pulsing with stolen magic. Fleur gasped, clutching her arm where a thin cut wept silver-tinged blood. "Zay, you're using mirror shards as conduits. They're not just crossing, they're feeding on the distortion." Harry's mind raced. "Then we break the mirrors. All of them." He fired a reductor curse at the apothecary's window mirror. The spell struck true. Glass exploded outward in a storm of jagged fragments. But instead of dying, the shards hovered, then reformed midair into a new, smaller mirror, spinning like a blade. "Merlin's beard," Harry muttered. Fleur wiped blood from her temple, her breath coming fast. "Say, Learn, adapt. They are not mere thieves, they are becoming the mirrors. Above them, the sky cracked, not with thunder, but with silence. A fissure split the clouds, revealing not stars, but a reflection of Prague, as it might have been. Streets, paved in white marble, towers crowned with glowing crystal, a city of ghosts and might-have-beens. And from that reflection, figures began to descend. Harry recognized one instantly. Himself, but older, face lined with grief, wand made of blackened bode. Their eyes met across the divide, and in that moment, Harry felt it, the weight of choices unmade, of love lost, of a war never truly won. Fleur grabbed his wrist, her touch burning with Veela urgency. Harry, do not look too long. They feed on your sorrow, on your doubt. He tore his gaze away, heart hammering. The older version of himself raised a hand, not in attack but in warning, then dissolved into mist as the mirror above shattered from within. A new voice echoed across the square, deep, resonant, speaking in a language that slivered between French and something older. The lead Mirrorwalker, the one still free, was chanting, arms outstretched, drawing power from the fractured reflections. Fleur's eyes widened. He's trying to collapse both worlds into one. Zem. We must stop him, now. Harry didn't hesitate. On 3, 1. A pulse of light erupted from the chant, and the ground trembled. 2. Fleur's magic flared like a star. 3. They charged together, wand and flame, past blood and shadow, toward the unraveling heart of the mirror-born war. The air in the abandoned Parisian salon was thick with dust, and the faint scent of burnt copper, a telltale residue of unstable magic. Shattered mirrors lay like frozen puddles across the floor, their glass not broken, but star unmade star, edges dissolving into shimmering ripples that pulsed with a slow, unnatural breath. Harry crouched beside one, tracing the frame with a gloved hand. He was here, he murmured, the trails still warm. Fleur stood near the doorway, her fingers pressed to her temple. The feel of blood in her veins hummed uneasily, a constant pressure behind her eyes, since they'd crossed into this fractured reflection of France. It wasn't pain, not exactly, more like a dissonant chord vibrating through her bones, as if her very essence was being stretched between two opposing notes. This place, it remembers, she said quietly, not just the theft, the choice. Harry glanced up. What choice? Before she could answer, the largest mirror at the far wall, cracked but still intact, began to ripple. Not with the chaotic distortion of a Mirrorwalker's passage, but with the slow, deliberate clarity of a surface being calmed. The glass darkened, then cleared, revealing not the ruined salon, but a sunlit drawing-room adorned with pale silks and fresh lilies, and in it, a woman. Fleur's breath caught. The woman was her, undoubtedly. The same silver-blonde hair, the same high cheekbones, the same graceful line of the neck. But everything else was different. Her eyes, though the same pale blue, held no Veela light, no shiver, no pull. She wore no auror's robes, no wand at her hip. Instead, she wore a simple linen dress, sleeves rolled to the elbows, flour dusting her fingers. A child, no more than 3, toddled into frame, giggling, and the woman scooped her up with a laugh that rang like wind chimes. Harry stepped forward, hand on his wand. That's not possible. This reflection shouldn't be stable. Fleur didn't move. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She's not a reflection, she whispered. She's me, but one who stayed. The woman in the mirror, star that star Fleur, set the child down and reached for a rolling pin, humming as she worked dough on a floured table. There were no scars on her hands, no marks of battle or loss, no grief for Gabrielle, who in this world had never been taken by the rogue Durmstrang enchantment during the Triwizard Tournament's aftermath, no guilt for surviving when her sister hadn't. In this life, Gabrielle had lived. They had grown up together, filled the cottage in the lower with laughter and safety, and she had never met Bill. Fleur felt the truth of it like a knife between her ribs. This version of her had chosen the quiet, had turned down the Beauxbatons emissary post in London, had refused the dangerous work with the Department of Mysteries, had stayed home, loved differently, lived fully in a way Fleur hadn't allowed herself. She's happy, Harry said, voice soft. Fleur swallowed. Whoa. And I do not know if I envy her, or mourn her. A flicker passed through the mirror. The sunlit kitchen wavered, the child's laughter distorting into a thin, echoing wail. The woman looked up, suddenly tense, her eyes darting toward the window, but not at them, and something something coming. Then the glass shattered, not outward, but inward, collapsing into a spiral of dark light before vanishing entirely, leaving only a scorched frame. Silence fell. Fleur pressed a hand to her mouth, trembling. The pressure in her veins had spiked, a hot tear slipping down her cheek before she could stop it. "She doesn't know," she whispered. "She doesn't know how fragile it all is." Harry reached for her, hesitant. "Fleur, that could have been me," she said, voice breaking. "I could have chosen safety. I could have." She stopped, unable to speak Gabrielle's name. He stepped closer. "You did what you had to. But at what cost?" she asked, turning to him. "Every choice splits us. Every path taken leaves another self behind, living a life we'll never know." She looked at her hands, calloused, marked by years of combat and spell work. "And I wonder if she is whole, and I am only pieces." Outside, thunder rolled, though the sky had been clear moments before. The mirrors in the room trembled, their edges glowing faintly. The boundary was thinning. Harry touched her arm, gentle. "Then we make sure her world stays safe, so she can keep kneading that dough, so her daughter never knows war." Fleur closed her eyes. The hum in her blood softened just a little. When she opened them again, her gaze was resolute. "Then we move, before the cracks spread further." And together, they stepped into the next mirror. The water was unnaturally still, a sheet of liquid mercury, beneath a sky choked with bruised clouds. Harry held his breath as the enchantment around them dissipated, the last ripple fading from the surface of Silver Lake like a sigh. Fleur stepped forward, her boots sinking slightly into the silt-covered shore, her veil shimmering despite the absence of wind. The air tasted metallic, thick with latent magic that prickled against Harry's skin like static. "It's here," she murmured, her voice low, almost reverent. "Beneath the deepest part, I can feel it, a hum, like a heartbeat beneath stone." Harry adjusted his glasses, scanning the water. "You're certain?" She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. "Veela do not misread resonance, Harry. This place remembers. It sings of something old, older than Hogwarts, older than the Ministry. And it knows we are coming." He nodded, pulling the enchanted compass from his coat, the one that spun only when in proximity to a mirror rift. Its needle now pointed straight down, quivering as if eager to dive. They had followed broken reflections across France, Belgium, and now this forgotten stretch of northern England, always one step behind the thief who slipped between worlds like smoke through cracks. But here, the trail didn't just end. It began. Fleur raised her wand, whispering in fluid French. A silver thread spun from the tip, spiraling down into the lake, sinking without disturbing the surface. It vanished beneath the black water, then pulsed once, twice, before glowing steadily. "There's a chamber," she said, "sealed with runes I've never seen, but they respond to my blood." Harry frowned. "Your blood." She exhaled, her breath, a pale mist. "Not mine alone. My grandmother was of the northern Veela clans, keepers of the old wards." He told stories of a time when mirrors were not tools, but thresholds, when the Veela and the first wizards walked both sides of the veil, before the sundering. He looked at her, really looked. The wind lifted strands of her hair like gossamer threads. "You think your people built this?" "I think they tried to contain it," she corrected softly, "and failed." They dove together, wrapped in bubble charms and Fleur's ancestral incantation that parted the water like silk. The descent was silent, save for the distant echo of their own heartbeats. The lake bed opened into a fissure, a mouth of rock veined with glowing lapis script. The ruse pulsed as they approached, shifting like living things. Fleur pressed her palm against the stone. A drop of blood welled from her fingertip, tracing a sigil in the air before sinking into the rock. The ground trembled. The fissure groaned open, revealing a staircase spiraling into darkness. Inside, the chamber was vast. A cathedral of obsidian and mirrored crystal. Towers of broken glass stood like frozen fountains, each shard reflecting not their current forms, but fragments of other lives. Harry saw himself in aura robes, older, weary. Then a child with green eyes laughing in sunlight. A version of Ginny, but not quite. Her smile unfamiliar, her hand entwined with someone else's. Fleur stood frozen before one mirror, her face pale. "That is Isabel," she whispered. "My sister, but she died as a girl. In this world she lives." Harry reached for her hand without thinking. There were echoes, possibilities. But the center of the chamber drew them forward, a dais carved from a single slab of moonstone, upon which lay a shattered mirror frame, its glass gone, its edges inscribed with ancient text. Harry knelt, tracing the symbols with his fingertips. They burned faintly, whispering directly into his mind. "It's a warning," he said slowly, "not from wizards. From the Mirrorwalkers themselves. They weren't thieves. They were guardians. They sealed the rifts to stop the bleed." The bleed? When choices become too many, when worlds grow too close, reality strains. The mirrors were never meant to be crossed, only observed, respected. Fleur stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Then who is opening them now?" Harry looked up, his eyes dark with realization. Someone who wants both worlds to collapse into one. And this chamber, it's the heart of it all. Break the dais, and every mirror, in both realities, shatters. A cold silence settled between them. Somewhere, deep beneath the lake, a mirror hummed, and for the first time, it answered back. The air in the abandoned Parisian metro station hummed thick with the scent of damp stone and ozone, a metallic tang that clung to the back of Harry's throat. Flickering gas lamps, ancient enchanted things, cast long, trembling shadows across the cracked tiles, their light warped as if seen through water. Before them, at the end of the tunnel, stood the mirror. Not a simple glass, but a towering oval, blackened silver, its surface rippling like ink poured into wine. It pulsed faintly, in time with the distant hollow thud of footsteps on the other side. Fleur moved first, her white blonde hair catching the dim glow like frost. She held her wand low, her posture coiled, every muscle taut. "Il est là," she whispered. "I can feel him, his energy. It fractures the veil." Harry nodded, gripping his own wand tighter. "Stay behind me." She shot him a look, half irritation, half something warmer, something that made his chest tighten. "I am not your damsel, Potter." "No," he said, allowing a ghost of a smile. "You never were." The mirror shimmered violently, and a figure stepped through. He was tall, cloaked in layers of dark fabric that seemed to absorb the light, and his face Harry's breath caught. It was familiar, not the man himself, but the eyes, the shape of the jaw, the way he held his shoulders like a man who has carried too much for too long. He looked like Harry, but older, weary, a version of himself that had lived a dozen more years of war. "You," Harry said, voice low, "you're not just a thief." The man smiled sadly. "Thief? No. I'm a messenger, a refugee." Fleur stepped forward, her Veela senses flaring. Her skin shimmered faintly, the silver aura flickering around her like heat haze. "You've been tearing holes between worlds. You've destabilized the barrier. Do you know what will happen if it collapses?" "I know," the man said, his voice rough, like stone dragged over stone. "I've lived it. In my world, the mirrors were sealed centuries ago, by force. The ministry, your ministry, declared cross-reality travel a capital offense. They feared what we might learn, what we might become." Harry frowned. "Learn? Become?" The man reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, cracked mirror, not a doorway, but a hand mirror. In its reflection, Harry saw not himself, but a child. A boy with messy black hair and green eyes, laughing as a woman with red hair chased him through a sunlit garden. Lily, his mother, alive. "This is what could have been," the man said. "A world where Voldemort never rose, where your parents lived, where peace endured." Fleur's breath caught. In the mirror's surface, another image flickered. Gabrielle, older now, smiling beside a man Fleur didn't recognize, surrounded by children. A life she never chose, too afraid to imagine. "But you've been stealing artifacts," Harry said, forcing his voice steady. "Disrupting the balance. To wake people up," the man snapped, his composure cracking. "To show them that we are not alone in the multiverse. That every choice spawns a new world, every regret a second chance. The mirrors aren't curses, they're gifts, and they're being hidden, buried, because the ministry fears change, fears truth. He looked at Harry, eyes piercing. You felt it, haven't you? The pull, the whisper of another life, the one where you didn't lose serious, where you didn't have to fight, where you could have loved freely. Fleur's hand brushed Harry's, brief and warm. He didn't pull away. And what of the cost, she asked, voice soft but fierce. For every world touched, the veil thins. If it breaks, both realities could unravel. The man bowed his head. I know, and I would not have gone this far if I hadn't seen her. Her? My daughter, he said, voice breaking. In another world she lived. In mine, she died at 2, illness, no cure. But in a reflection, I saw her grow. I heard her laugh. I just wanted one more moment. Silence settled, thick as fog. Harry lowered his wand, and Fleur, her eyes glistening, stepped past him, not to attack, but to reach out. The mirror trembled. Somewhere, far beyond, glass shattered. Rain lashed against the shattered remnants of the Luxembourg mirror chamber, its silver frame groaning like a dying beast. The air crackled with displaced magic, thick with the scent of ozone and something older, like burnt parchment and frozen wind. Harry's breath came in ragged bursts as he crouched behind a fallen column, wand trained on the pulsing rift at the room's center. It wasn't a doorway anymore. It was a wound. Fleur stood before it, her hair whipping around her like a silver storm, her arms outstretched. A low hum resonated from her chest, a sound not quite human. Veela song, ancient and desperate. The rift flickered, pulling at the edges of reality. Outside, through the broken dome, the sky split in two, one half storm-racked Paris, the other a ghostly inversion, white towers floating above a blood-red moon. They're not mirrors anymore, Fleur whispered, her voice raw. They're scars. And if we don't close this one, it will tear the others open like paper. Harry stepped forward, mud-slick stones shifting under his boots. There has to be another way. You're not strong enough to— I am the only one who can feel the thread between, she snapped, turning her head just enough for him to see the blue fire in her eyes. My blood knows the balance. I felt it since the first echo, since I saw her star. He didn't need to ask whom she meant. The other Fleur, the one in the reflection world. Older, colder, a woman who had never loved, never lost, never chosen star, had stared back at her with empty eyes. And yet, in that gaze, Fleur had glimpsed a terrible truth, what she might have become without warmth, without risk. The rift convulsed. A shard of obsidian glass shot through the air, slicing Harry's cheek. He barely flinched. You'll be torn apart if you go in. I'm not going in, she said, lowering her hands. I am becoming the bridge. She raised her wand, ivory veined with mother of pearl, and spoke in a language Harry didn't know. Words that slithered and sang, pulling at the air like silk. The ground trembled. The mirror frame glowed, then cracked, molten white seeping from its fractures. No, Harry breathed. Fleur, stop. But she stepped forward into the rift. For a heartbeat, she was still, whole, radiant, her silhouette outlined in white fire. Then the world stuttered. Harry saw her split, not just into reflection, but into star possibility star. Dozens of Fleurs flickered around the rift, a warrior in dragon-hide armor, a healer with hands glowing emerald, a woman weeping into the snow, another laughing beside a man who looked like Bill but wasn't, and one, just one, reaching for him, eyes full of something he couldn't name. Then she screamed. It wasn't a sound of pain. It was the sound of the soul stretched across dimensions, of magic unraveling at the core. Harry lunged, but the air had thickened, resistant as tar. He could only watch as Fleur's body began to fray star, her edges blurring, her light scattering like dust in a storm. Take my hand, he shouted, forcing his way forward, wand clutched in one hand, the other outstretched. Fleur, take it. She turned, half of her face still Fleur, the other, a shifting mosaic of silver and shadow. You must not follow, she gasped. Seal it. Now. I won't leave you. The mirror remembers choices, she whispered. And mine is made. With a final cry, she thrust both hands into the rift. The explosion wasn't lied. It was star, silent star, a vacuum of sound and light. Harry was thrown back, his ears ringing, vision swimming. When he looked again, the rift was shrinking, collapsing inward, like a star dying, and at its heart, Fleur hung suspended, arms still outstretched, her body glowing like a dying star. He crawled forward, blood and rain mixing on his hands. Fleur, her eyes opened. Pale blue, human again. Harry. He reached her just as the last of the light snapped shut. She collapsed into his arms, cold and trembling. "It's not over," she whispered against his shoulder. "The others, they'll break, one by one." He held her tighter, feeling the faint beat of her heart. "Then we'll be there, together." And in the silence that followed, the last shard of the mirror cracked, once, and fell into dust. The air tasted like burnt copper, thick and metallic, as Harry stumbled through the fractured corridor. Shards of glass floated in the air like frozen rain, each one reflecting a distorted version of him. A Harry with hollow eyes, a Harry laughing maniacally, a Harry who had never worn glasses, a Harry who had died in the graveyard at 14. He moved carefully, boots crunching on the glass-littered floor, wand raised, breath shallow. The world around him was unraveling, the walls breathing in and out, like a dying beast, doors appearing and vanishing without warning. A whisper slithered from a shattered mirror ahead. "You left me behind, Harry." He froze. The voice was Ginny's, but wrong, too cold, too sharp. From the broken glass stepped a figure in crimson robes, red hair like fire, but her eyes were black voids. "You chose duty, you always choose duty." "I didn't have a choice," Harry said, voice tight. "You never look," she hissed, stepping forward. "You never see star." He raised his wand. The spell ricocheted off the glass walls, splintering into 3, striking mirrors that exploded into screaming faces. The Ginny thing lunged, not with a wand, but with claws of reflected light. Harry dodged, rolling behind a collapsing pillar, heart hammering. These weren't just illusions. These were star echoes. Fragments of lost selves given form by the collapsing boundary, and they knew his regrets. Meanwhile, Fleur pressed through the opposite end of the shattered realm, the air humming with dissonant magic. Her Veela senses screamed. Every step deeper into the mirror, world frayed something inside her. The distortion tugged at her very essence, as if trying to peel her soul into reflections. She clutched the silver locket around her neck. Harry's mother's locket, enchanted to resonate with the core mirror. It pulsed faintly, warm against her skin. Come on," she whispered, fingers trembling. The corridor twisted, doubling back on itself like a Mobius strip. She passed a mirror showing her as headmistress of Beauxbaton, another where she stood at Bill's grave, another where she'd never left France, never met Harry, never star-burned star with this strange, quiet longing. She looked away. Then, there, at the end of the warped hall, a mirror, unlike the others, whole, pristine. Its frame was carved with runes in a language older than Latin, pulsing with a slow, rhythmic light, the core. But before she could step toward it, the air thickened. Shadows peeled from the walls, coalescing into figures, twisted versions of her family. Gabrielle, but with eyes like frozen stars. Her mother, mouth stitched shut. Her father, whispering in a language that made her bones ache. "Tu n'as pas la vase," the false Gabrielle said. "You failed us. You left. You chose him star." Phyllis' breath caught. "I did what I had to. You want him," the Shadow Mother said, voice like cracking ice. "Even now, even here," she clenched her jaw. "That is not a crime. It is in this place," the father thing growled. "Here, truth has teeth." Fleur raised her wand, but her hand shook. How could she fight phantoms made of her own guilt? Back in the collapsing corridor, Harry lay pinned beneath a fallen mirror, the Ginny echo straddling him, fingers tightening around his throat. "You could have stayed," she whispered. "You could have loved me enough to stay." Tears stung his eyes. "I loved you. I do love you. But it wasn't enough, was it? Not for either of us." The thing hesitated. The black eyes flickered. Just for a second. With something human. And in that moment, Harry whispered, "I'm sorry." The echo shuddered and crumbled into mist. Across the realm, Fleur screamed a spell, not at the shadows, but at her own heart. Je suis ici, je suis star real star. The locket flared, the core mirror cracked, and the world began to scream. The air in the chamber tasted of burnt silver and old lightning, each breath a jagged pull through Harry's lungs. The final mirror stood at the far end of the ruined hall, its silver frame cracked like frozen lightning, the glass within swirling with storm clouds that never broke. Beyond it, faint and flickering, the skyline of London, his London, shimmered like a dream on the edge of waking. Home. But the way was barred by more than glass. Behind them, the corridor collapsed in slow motion, bricks dissolving into ash, the laws of magic unraveling thread by thread. The thief, the Mirrorwalker, was gone, vanished into the rift between worlds, but their trail had led here to this last doorway. And the mirror demanded payment. "It takes one to let two pass," Fleur whispered, her voice raw. Her silver hair clung to her temples, damp with cold sweat, and her Veela glow, usually a soft golden shimmer, flickered like a dying candle. Not a life, a self, a choice. You step through. Did you leave part of you behind? Forever. Harry stared into the glass. For a heartbeat, he saw himself, older, bearded, standing in a garden with children who looked like Ginny, but weren't. A life he might have had if the war had ended differently. If he'd chosen to lay down the wand. The image vanished, replaced by darkness. "I've done worse," he said, stepping forward. Fleur's hand shot out, fingers curling around his wrist like iron. "No," he turned. Her eyes, pale blue, almost white now, were wide, haunted. "You don't understand what it means, Harry. It's not just memory. It's not just pain. It takes the thing you hold closest, the part of you that makes you star your star. And what if that part is the war?" he asked quietly. "What if it's the weight of everyone I couldn't save? What if the man who walks through that mirror doesn't need to carry it anymore?" Her breath caught. "And what if he's not star? You star then. He still breathes. He still fights." "That's enough." She stepped closer, so close he could feel the warmth of her, the faint hum of her Veela blood resisting the pull of the dying world. "You think I would let you do this? That I would stand here and watch you give yourself up like some martyr at the altar? It's not martyrdom," he said. "It's balance. One stays, one goes, one forgets, one remembers. That's how it works." "No," her voice dropped, trembling. "There is another way." "There isn't. You've seen the ruins. The magic won't hold. Another minute, and the collapse will reach the ministry. Then Hogwarts. Then both worlds." She closed her eyes. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek, and where it fell, the stone hissed, steaming as though burned. When she looked at him again, her gaze was not just fierce, it was ancient. "You are not the only one who has lived with ghosts," she said. "You think I do not mourn? Then I do not see Gabrielle in every shadow, hear her laughter in the wind? But I carry her star with star me, not as a wound, as a light." Her hand moved from his wrist to his chest, pressing flat against his heart. "And this stubborn, broken, beautiful thing is why I cannot let you go." Then she kissed him, not gentle, not hesitant. It was a claiming, a defiance of the unraveling world. The air between them shivered, and for the first time Harry felt the full force of her Veela magic, not as power, but as truth. A surge of warmth, of memory, of star choice. Surge. When she pulled away, her lips were trembling. "I will go." "No, I am not you," she said, "but I love you enough to carry what you leave behind, and strong enough to walk through fire to bring you back." Before he could speak, before he could move, she turned and stepped into the mirror. The glass flared white. A sound like 1,000 bells shattering filled the air. Harry lunged forward, but the mirror cracked down the center, then sealed shut, smooth and dark as obsidian. He fell to his knees, fingers scraping at the cold frame. On the other side, the London skyline remained, but Fleur was gone, and the mirror was silent. The air in the abandoned Parisian apothecary hung thick with dust and the ghost of dried herbs, moonlight slicing through broken shutters to stripe the cracked stone floor. Harry stood before the largest mirror, its silvered surface no longer reflecting the ruined room, but a shimmering corridor of starlight suspended in glass. Fleur knelt beside it, fingertips brushing the frame's intricate runes, her breath slow and measured. The faint luminescence of her Veela blood pulsed beneath her skin, a soft blue aura that flickered like candlelight in a draught. "It is not just a door," she whispered. "It is a heart, beating." Harry crouched beside her, the cold seeping through his robes. He'd stopped questioning how she knew these things. His senses had grown sharper, stranger, since they'd begun chasing the thief through the mirrors. Sometimes, when the veil between worlds thinned, she'd shiver, as though touched by an unseen hand, her pupils dilating into silver pools. He'd seen her flinch at reflections that showed nothing at all. "We need to open it," he said, voice low. Before the next echo tide, she turned to him, her eyes catching the mirror's glow. "It is not opened by force, Harry. It chooses." He exhaled, frustration curling in his chest. They'd been at this for hours. Spells, countercharms, even blood sigils drawn with his wand tip. Nothing had worked. The mirror remained just out of reach, a dream behind glass. Then Fleur reached for his hand. Her fingers were cool, but the moment they laced with his, warmth bloomed between their palms. A spark, then a current. He felt it in his bones, a resonance like two strings struck in harmony. The mirror rippled. "Your magic," she murmured, "and mine, together." He didn't question it. Instead, he focused on the quiet strength in her grip, on the way her breath stilled as their auras intertwined. His magic, rough and instinctive, met hers, precise and ancient. The air hummed. Cracks of light spiderwebbed across the mirror's surface, not breaking it but revealing something beneath, the image of a garden beneath twin moons, silver trees swaying in a wind that carried the scent of rain and jasmine. A path, but the moment stretched too long. The mirror began to tremble. Fleur gasped, her free hand flew to her temple. "Something comes, not through the glass. Around it." Harry turned. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, coiling like smoke. Reflections in the smaller mirrors, shattered shards along the wall. Twisted, faces formed where none had been. A woman's face, familiar, Lily Potter. Her eyes full of sorrow. Then another, Bill Weasley, but with one eye missing, his face lined with grief. Echoes, not real, but not illusions either. Fragments of lives unmade. "They're drawn to the breach," Harry said, tightening his hold on Fleur's hand. "The barrier's failing." She nodded, jaw clenched. "Then we go now." "But we seal it forever." He looked into her eyes, blue as glacier ice, yet burning with resolve. In that moment he saw not just the partner assigned to him, but the woman who had stood in fire and storm, who had loved and lost and still stepped forward. Together, he said, they stepped into the mirror. The world dissolved into light. Not pain, but pressure, like being pulled through a narrow space between breaths. He felt Fleur beside him, her presence, the tether, then ground beneath his feet, cool air, the scent of night-blooming flowers. They stood in the garden, but above them the sky cracked, thin fractures of black spreading across the stars. Time was unraveling, and somewhere the thief waited. Fleur whispered, "We are not alone," and from the silver trees a figure emerged, wearing Harry's face, but with eyes full of centuries. Rain lashed against the cobblestones of an alley in Prague, the air thick with the scent of wet stone and burnt ozone. Harry's breath came in short bursts, his wand trembling slightly in his hand as the mirror ahead of them shimmered like oil on water. It wasn't just reflecting the alley anymore, it was showing something else, or rather someone else. Fleur stood beside him, her silver hair clinging to her temples, her Veela aura flickering like a candle in a draught. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breath hitching. "It's stronger now," she whispered. "The pull, it's not just a doorway, it's a wound." Harry didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the image in the glass. A version of himself stood on the other side, older, softer around the edges, his scar faint beneath a fringe of grey-streaked hair. And beside him, Ginny, but not as he remembered her. This Ginny wore a smile that reached her eyes, her hand resting on the shoulder of a little girl with fiery red curls who couldn't have been more than 6. His throat tightened. "They're happy," Fleur murmured, her voice barely audible over the rain. "In that world, you stayed." He swallowed hard. "I didn't have a choice here," he said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "The war, I know, but they didn't have a war. Or if they did, it ended differently." She turned to him, her eyes luminous in the dim light. "You look at her, like you remember in a dream you never got to live." Harry looked away. The image shifted. Now it was Fleur's turn. The mirror rippled, and there she stood, another Fleur, radiant in the flowing blue dress, standing in a sun-drenched courtyard. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall and dark-haired, holding the hand of a boy who bore his father's features. The boy, half Veela, with silver lashes and eyes like stormlight, laughed as he chased a butterfly through the air. Fleur's breath caught. That's William," she whispered. "My brother. He survived the attack in Marseille. And my child—" She took an involuntary step forward, then stopped herself, fists clenched at her sides. "That life was never mine. I chose duty. I chose the ministry. I chose survival," Harry finished gently. She looked at him, her composure cracking. "Would you have chosen differently, Harry? If you could see that life every day, the one where you didn't lose so much?" He thought of Teddy growing up without his parents, of Fred's empty chair at Weasley family dinners, of the quiet way Ginny had looked at him after the final battle, love still there, but burdened with grief neither of them could carry alone. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't live in a reflection." The mirror trembled. Fracture split the glass and the images began to bleed together, his Ginny waving from a garden, Fleur's child laughing in sunlight, the two worlds overlapping like watercolors in the rain. Then from the distortion, a figure stepped through. Not the thief, not this time. It was Hermione, but not as they knew her. Her robes were dark, her expression weary, and behind her, a skyline of floating towers hovered above a ruined London. "You're too late," she said, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "The veil is thinning. They're not stealing mirrors, they're binding them, turning them into anchors, and when the last one falls, both worlds will collapse into one." Fleur stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Who are you working with?" The other Hermione hesitated. "Someone who remembers when it was like to lose everything, and who refuses to lose it again." Then she was gone, the mirror shattering into 1,000 silver shards that dissolved into mist before they hit the ground. Harry exhaled slowly, his hands shaking now for a different reason. She wasn't lying. "No," Fleur said, her voice steady once more. "And we are running out of time." He looked at her, really looked. At the strength in her jaw, the sorrow in her eyes, the way she carried her losses like a cloak she'd learned to wear. "Then we keep going," he said, "no matter what we see." She nodded, and together, they stepped into the next reflection. The air in the glass city was thin and humming, like the space between breaths. Towering spires of crystal rose in impossible spirals, refracting light into colors that had no name. Beneath their feet, the ground was not stone, but a seamless mirror that reflected not their forms, but glimpses, fleeting, fractured, of other lives. A child laughing in a sunlit garden, a man standing alone on a battlefield, a woman in silver robes placing a hand on a younger version of herself. Harry's boots left no mark, but each step sent ripples through the reflections, as though disturbing memories buried under ice. Fleur walked beside him, her breath forming delicate frost in the cold air. Her silver hair caught the fractured light, shimmering like water over moonstone. She was tense. Harry could feel it in the way her fingers curled slightly at her sides, in the way her Veela aura pulsed in uneven waves, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. The distortion here was stronger, heavier, pressing against their magic like a tide. Ahead, the council awaited. They emerged from the glass-like figures stepping from water, robed in shifting silver, their faces obscured by masks of polished obsidian. 7 of them, floating above the mirrored floor, their forms neither solid nor smoke, but something in between. The leader raised a hand, and the air stilled. "You have trespassed," the voice came, not through ears, but through bone. "You disturbed the balance." Harry stepped forward. "We're not here to fight. We want to understand. People are vanishing in our world, families, friends. The mirrors are cracking. If this goes on, both worlds will shatter." One of the Mirrorwalkers tilted their head. "The fracture was inevitable. Your world grows heavy with denial. Ours with silence. The mirrors were never meant to be bridges, only warnings." Fleur stepped beside Harry, her voice clear and steady. "Then let us listen to the warning." She turned toward the council, her eyes bright with something fierce and tender. "You speak of balance, but you take lives to preserve it. Is that truly balance? Or fear?" A ripple passed through the gathered figures. One lowered their mask, revealing a face, both young and ancient, familiar and strange. It was her. Fleur, but not. A Fleur who had never left France, who had never loved, who had chosen duty over desire. "You know what it costs," the doppelganger said softly. "To cross, to stay. We are not thieves. We are keepers. The mirrors show what could be, what might have been, but every choice made in one world echoes in the other. When someone steps through and refuses to return, the echo collapses, and the walls between us tremble." Fleur's breath caught. "So you take them back, by force, to mend the tear. To preserve both." Harry looked around at the shimmering city, at the reflections still swirling beneath them. He saw Ginny laughing in a kitchen. Then an image flickered. Ginny, older, alone, her eyes full of quiet sorrow, a life where he never returned from the war. Then another, Ron, holding a child, but in a world where Hermione had never existed. Each vision was a knife, and then he saw Fleur. Not as she was, but as she might have been, a queen in the cold palace, powerful, revered, but untouched by love. Unmarried, unclaimed, whole yet hollow, he turned to her, and something broke open in his chest. "We don't have to choose," Fleur said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Not between worlds, not between what was and what could be. If you fear the echoes, then let us help you carry them. Let us find another way." The council stirred. Light bent around the warping. "You are bound by emotion," the leader said. "Love, regret, a cloud judgment, perhaps," Fleur said, lifting her chin. "But they also give us strength. You have forgotten what it means to feel. And in forgetting, you risk losing everything." Silence followed. Then slowly, the lead Mirrorwalker reached up and removed their mask. Beneath was not a face but a mirror. And in it, Harry saw himself and Fleur, together, standing at the edge of two worlds, hands almost touching. The air softened. The hum beneath their feet quieted. "Speak," the Mirrorwalker said, "and we will listen." The air tasted of burnt ozone and old magic thick enough to choke on. Shards of mirror hung suspended around them, jagged fragments of silvered glass floating like broken teeth in a storm. Each piece reflected not the crumbling cathedral they stood in, but fractured glimpses of another world. London streets under violet skies, Hogwarts with towers of ice, a Weasley kitchen where Ron never returned from the war. The ground beneath Harry's boots trembled, not with earth, but with the pulse of two realities grinding against each other, like tectonic plates of spellwork. Fleur knelt at the center of it all, her hands pressed to a cracked obsidian mirror, embedded in the stone floor. Her hair, usually a cascade of moonlight, now writhed around her like living flame, strands lifting as though under water. Her eyes glowed faintly, opalescent, Veela, blood rising to the surface, reacting to the unraveling fabric of the worlds. She was chanting in a language Harry didn't know, syllables that hummed in his bones, each word a thread pulled taut across dimensions. "I can feel them," she whispered, voice frayed. "The echoes, they're screaming." Harry crouched beside her, wand gripped tight. "Just hold on. We're almost there." "It's not holding," she gasped. "The balance, it's shifting. He's still out there. The Mirrorwalker. He's not trying to steal anymore. He's trying to merge star. Star mirror." A mirror to their left exploded outward, not with glass, but with cold. A figure stepped through, tall, cloaked in shifting reflections, face obscured by a mask of polished silver. Behind him, a city of glass spires burned in the distance, its sky split by twin suns. "You're too late," the figure said, voice echoing from 1,000 unseen throats. "The thread is already cut." Harry rose, placing himself between Fleur and the intruder. "You don't get to decide that," the world twisted. The cathedral melted into a memory, Harry standing in Godric's Hollow, snow falling, but this time the door opened, and Lily answered, alive, smiling. He flinched, knowing it wasn't real, but his heart stuttered all the same. Fleur cried out behind him. He turned. She was clutching her chest, tears streaking her face. In the mirror beside her, a version of her stood, radiant and whole, ill at her side, their daughter in her arms, Gabrielle alive, laughing. The Fleur on the ground sobbed. That was supposed to be, that was possible star. Wah, it's a lie, Harry said, kneeling to grip her shoulders. They're using your regrets. Don't let them in. But what if I want Star to believe? Her voice broke. What if I'm tired of being strong? The Mirrorwalker laugh. Fate is a tapestry. I am the weaver. I show what should have been. I make it star. Real star, Harry. Harry looked at Fleur, really looked. The fire in her eyes wasn't just pain, it was defiance. He could feel it, the pull between worlds, like a current dragging them under. But he also felt something else, her hand in his, cold but certain. We don't get perfect lives, he said softly, but we get this star one, and I'm not letting go. She nodded, breath shuddering. Then we end it, together. She raised her hands again, and Harry placed his wand upon the obsidian mirror. Their magic met, not in collision, but in harmony. Emerald light spiraled with silver, weaving into the chant, reinforcing the ritual. The floating shards began to spin faster, aligning, correcting. The Mirrorwalker screamed as the reflections turned against him. One by one, the false worlds collapsed, folding in on themselves like burning parchment. The cathedral trembled, stones cracking, light pouring from the seams in the sky. Fleur gasped. It's working, but the cost. I know, Harry said. I'm ready. The final thread snapped into place. A pulse of silence, then a sound like 1,000 doors closing at once, and then only stillness. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of ozone and old stone, a low hum vibrating through the soles of Harry's boots as he stepped forward, wand raised. Before them, the final mirror stood, taller than the others, its frame carved from blackened silver that seemed to drink the light. Fleur stood at his side, her breath coming in shallow pulses, her fingers twitching at her sides. The Veela in her had been restless for hours, a coiled tension beneath her skin, her silver eyes reflecting not the chamber, but something beyond. It's not real, she whispered, though her voice trembled. Whatever we see, it will not be true. Harry nodded, but his heart hammered against his ribs. The mirror shimmered, not with reflection, but with possibility. It showed not their faces, but their deepest longings, crafted by the Mirrorwalkers to break them. The surface rippled, and then they were no longer in the chamber. Harry stood in a sun-drenched garden, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. The child's laughter rang out. He turned, and there, beneath a flowering cherry tree, was Ginny, older, softer around the edges, her red hair threaded with silver, and beside her, a boy with messy black hair and green eyes identical to his own. James? Harry breathed. Ginny looked up, smiled, warm, familiar, everything he had once believed he wanted. You're late, she said gently. He's been asking for you. The boy ran to him, small hands clutching his robes. Dad, will you show me the Patronus again? Harry's throat tightened. This was his life, what it could have been. Stable, whole, no war, no missing years, no restless nights, haunted by choices made and unmade. He took a step forward, then, a hand on his arm. Harry. Fleur's voice, sharp with warning. Look at me. He turned. She stood apart from the scene, untouched by his warmth, her face pale. This is not your truth, she said. This is a lie shaped like desire. But the boy tugged at his sleeve. Please, Dad. Harry hesitated. Then the garden flickered. The sky darkened. Ginny's smile twisted into sorrow. You always leave, she whispered. Even when you're here, you're gone. The illusion wavered and shattered, and then it was Fleur's turn. She stood in a grand hall lined with French tapestries, the air filled with the murmur of voices and the clink of crystal. A woman approached, her sister, Gabrielle, alive, radiant, unharmed. Behind her, a man with warm blue eyes and a child in his arms, a little girl with silver gold hair, and Fleur's proud stance. You came home, Gabrielle said, tears in her eyes. We thought we'd lost you. Fleur's breath caught. But you were taken, she whispered, by the dark wizards. That was another life, the man said gently. We are safe. Here, you never left. Fleur reached out, her fingers brushing her sister's cheek, warm, real, or so it felt. Harry watched her, heart breaking. He knew that grief, knew the weight of what could never be undone. "Fleur," he said softly, "look at me." She turned, eyes glistening. "This isn't real," he said, "but we are, right here, right now." Her lip trembled. "What if I want this?" "Then take it," he said. "But know this, I need you, not some ghost of a life, not a dream. Star, you, star." Silence stretched between them. Then slowly Fleur stepped back from the vision. The hall dimmed. Gabrielle reached for her, pleading. But the image cracked like glass. The mirror shrieked. A pulse of energy tore through the room, throwing them both to their knees. The frame groaned, silver veins spreading like frost across its surface. "It's breaking," Harry gasped. Fleur clutched his arm, her voice raw. "Then we break it first." Together they rose. Hand in hand they stepped into the mirror, not to escape, but to destroy. And as the glass consumed them, the illusion died behind their eyes, replaced by something truer than memory, stronger than regret, a single unshakable truth. They were not alone. The glass cracked with a sound like ice breaking under moonlight, sharp, clear, and final. Harry stumbled back, breath ragged, the wand in his hand trembling as the last pulse of violet light faded from the mirror's surface. It hung in the air for a heartbeat, shimmering like oil on water, then dissolved into nothing. The frame crumbled into dust, no longer magic, no longer a door. Around them, the grand hall of the abandoned chateau lay in silence, the other mirrors. 23 of them, going dark, one by one, their surfaces turning dull, lifeless. The air itself seemed to exhale, the unnatural chill retreating, the weight of two worlds pressing together finally lifting. Fleur stood near the center of the room, her back straight, her silver hair catching the faint morning light filtering through the broken stained glass above. She hadn't moved since the last spell had been cast. Her fingers brushed her temple, where a faint, lingering ache still pulsed, a remnant of the Veela sensitivity that had screamed at her every time the boundaries thinned. Now the silence in her blood was almost startling. "It's over," Harry said, voice low, more to himself than to her. Fleur turned slowly. Her eyes, pale blue, almost luminous in the dim light, met his. "We," she said. "But not as we thought it would be." He nodded. "Not as anyone had thought. The Mirrorwalkers weren't thieves. They were refugees, mages from a world unraveling, trying to stitch their dying reality into theirs, piece by stolen piece. And Harry had seen them, echoes of his parents, alive and whole, standing on the other side of glass. A version of Ginny who smiled at him with warmth he hadn't felt in years. A Ron who never left school, who stayed to fight beside him, who never married Hermione. He swallowed hard. The temptation had been real, not to steal, to stay. And Fleur. She had seen Gabrielle, younger, laughing, unharmed, though in this world her sister had survived the war, whole and bright. But it wasn't her Gabrielle. Not really, just a reflection shaped by longing. "They used our grief," Harry said. "Our regrets. Not just grief," Fleur whispered. "Our dreams, too." A breeze stirred through the shattered windows, carrying the scent of damp stone and distant rain. Somewhere outside, birds sang. Normal sounds, real sounds. Harry looked at her, really looked. The journey had changed her. Tired lines around her eyes, a new weight in her posture. But also, something softer. A vulnerability she'd never let show before. When she'd held his hand as they stepped through the third mirror, her touch warm despite the cold between worlds, he hadn't pulled away. Neither had she. "I never thought I'd see her again," Fleur said, voice barely above a breath. Even if it wasn't real, seeing her laugh, it was like breathing after drowning. Harry stepped closer. "I understand," she smiled, faint but true. "Do you? Because I think I wanted to go through, at the end, just once, to tell her I'm sorry, that I didn't protect her enough." "You did," he said firmly. "You always did." She looked away, blinking once quickly. "And you? What would you have stayed for?" He didn't answer right away. He thought of the boy in the mirror. Harry, but not him. A Harry who had never lost anyone. Who had grown up with parents, with love, with peace. A life untouched by war. But he also thought of Teddy's laugh, of Molly's hugs, of the quiet pride in McGonagall's eyes when he walked into Hogwarts. "I would have stayed," he admitted. "But not forever. Because this world, it's messy, it hurts, but it's real, and it's mine." Fleur met his gaze again. The silence between them stretched, not empty, but full, of things unsaid, of paths not taken, of futures still unwritten. After a moment she reached out, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "Then perhaps we do not need mirrors to see what matters." Harry covered her hand with his. "No," he said. "Maybe we just needed to walk through fire, to realize it was always there." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long golden light across the ruined hall. The mirrors were dead. The worlds were whole, and for the first time in a long time, Harry felt clear. Rain tapped softly against the windowpane of the small cottage, nestled in the Welsh hills, a steady rhythm that had become familiar over the past fortnight. Inside, the fire crackled low, casting long, wavering shadows across the stone walls. Harry stood by the mantel, staring into the flames, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his worn coat. The weight of weeks, of chases through fractured reflections, of whispers from versions of himself he'd never been, still clung to his bones like damp. Behind him, the kettle whistled. Fleur moved through the kitchen with quiet precision, her silver blonde hair pulled into a loose knot at her nape. She poured the tea without speaking, the scent of lavender and chamomile threading through the air. When she handed him the cup, her fingers brushed his. Just once, and he felt her, that faint, electric hum that had begun the first time they'd touched in Prague, standing before a mirror that showed not their reflections, but something else entirely. "Still thinking about him?" she asked, voice low. Almost too gentle. "Not just him," Harry said. "All of them. The other Hermione, the one who stayed, the Ron who never left home, Ginny, the one who married someone else." He exhaled. "It's strange, isn't it? To see what you might have been, and wonder if it's better." Fleur took a slow sip, her gaze drifting to the far corner of the room. There, standing upright against the wall, was the last mirror. Untouched, unbroken. Its surface shimmered faintly, not with light, but with something deeper, like breath beneath glass. "They weren't better," she said at last. "Just different, and not ours." He turned to look at it too. The frame was silver, etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the dim light. It had survived every attempt to destroy it. Fiend fire, basilisk venom, even a fragment of the original mirror of Erised embedded at its base. Nothing worked. And yet, it did nothing. No voices, no visions. Just waiting. "We could seal it," Harry said. "Bury it beneath Azkaban, chain it with Ollivander's last wand." "And what then?" Fleur asked, stepping closer to it. "Would the echoes stop, or would they simply find another way?" She reached out, her hand hovering inches from the surface. The air around it thickened, charged. Her Veela blood stirred. Harry could see it in the faint silver glow that traced her veins beneath her skin. She'd been different since Prague. Stronger, more attuned, as if the in-between had left its mark on her too. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "if we were meant to find it?" He frowned. "The mirror?" "No, each other." The fire pocked. A log collapsed into embers. Harry set his cup down, untouched. "I used to think love was something you found," she continued, still gazing at the glass, "like a lost object, a misplaced name. But now, I think it might be something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice." She turned to him. "Even when the world is breaking." He crossed the room, stopping just beside her. Their shoulders almost touched. "I made a lot of wrong turns," he said. "After the war, after Ginny, I thought I had to keep running, from memories, from grief, from myself. And now?" He looked into the mirror. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, just for a breath, he saw them, older, laughing in a sunlit kitchen. A child's drawing taped to the frame. A future, fragile but real. Now, he said nothing, just reached for her hand, and the mirror at last went still.